A faint glow moves across the dark, slow as a breath drawn by the sky. Small against the canvas of night, yet steady, it travels like an ancient promise kept. The film's voice is gentle. A visitor has come, not with thunder, but with a whisper. It traces a patient orbit, a quiet line of ink. Below, cities dim and roofs cool. Above, the comet continues, a drifting shadow wrapped in a soft glow that does not disturb the sleeping world. Telescopes swivel, their domes opening like calm eyes. Glass catches starlight and feeds it to instruments. A spectrograph separates, colors the way a hand separates threads, and in those threads, chemistry appears. Water locked in memory, carbon from a long winter between stars, fine dust shaped by time. The solar wind combs the tail until it streams like silk. In the slow drift of data, the night gains texture. The comet is mass and motion, but it is also story something seen, measured and quietly felt. Elsewhere, a child puts their forehead to a window and watches a tiny dot glide. You might do the same stand in the quiet of your room. Let the lamp be dim. Let your breathing match the sky. Far away, a radio dish turns, tracking a moving point so faint it feels like an idea more than an object. The dish does not shout, it listens. Signals hum through long cables. Recorders tick. One more line on a graph, one more brush stroke across the sky. The city settles, windows blink out. On a mountain road, a car pulls over and the driver steps into the chill. Boots crunch, breath white, horizon wide. In living rooms and kitchens, screens dim and kettles click. The night is a cradle of silence now, and in that silence, small things carry far. The faint hiss of wind, the soft pulse of distant traffic, the cosmic whisper of a visitor passing under the moon's pale attention. If you're listening as you drift towards sleep, that is why these stories exist. Subscribe and share where you are and what time it is. I read them one by one. New York at midnight, Dallas after the late shift, London before dawn, Karachi in the blue hour, Sydney at noon like a constellation of listeners spread across. Earth. Heard across centuries. Visitors like this have always carried two faces, explanation and wonder. In the past, people feared omens and prayed for clear horizons. Later, they built better telescopes and learned to name the glow. The word comet holds both a fact and a feeling. It means a body of rock and ice, an orbit cut long ago, a path the sun draws tight with gravity. It also means the surprise of waking at night and seeing a line of light drawn exactly where no line was before. The film voice stays calm, laying out the simple pieces. An orbit tells where the traveler has been and suggests where it will go. A trajectory is the orbit caught in time. This position, this speed, this gentle curve. The sun tugs, the planets tug. Even the breeze of photons adds a tiny push. Outgassing small jets of vapor that sigh from the warm side can nudge the path by the width of a city road, then another, then another. To an astronomer, it is normal. To a tired mind at a window, it feels like magic. Here, the story turns a little. What if this is more than ice and rock? What if it is also a messenger, not carrying words, but carrying attention? The question is not a claim. It is a way to stay awake without strain, to let curiosity be a low tide pulling at the shore of thought. If a traveler wanted to learn about a world, it would not crash into it. It would pass at a careful distance, watch the soft glow of city lights, taste the solar wind as it wraps around a magnetic shield. Listen to how the planet answers under the dome again. Machines breathe in slow rhythms. The spectrograph prints another spectrum, a neat forest of lines. Sodium, water, simple organics. A signature from cold birthplaces beyond any nearby nebula. The comet is old, but the way we see it is new. Deep surveys once looked for exoplanets by tiny dimmings in starlight. Now, the same kind of patience finds travelers so faint they barely exist except in their effects. We know them because the sky wavers by a hair. You can imagine the Earth itself as an instrument. The atmosphere is a light drum, whispering when meteors brush it. The magnetosphere is a slow string, singing an aurora when the solar wind plucks it. Oceans hold long memories, their tides like clocks. To a careful observer, the planet reveals its seams and strengths by how it answers small touches. If evaluation were a language, this would be the grammar. Touch, reply. Touch, reply. In the language of bedtime, facts do not compete with mood. They carry it. Mass explains the arc. Heat explains the fog. Photons push. Jets breathe. The telescope listens. The spectrograph names. In this calm naming, fear has no foothold. Still, the mind wonders about the hidden layer. Is there an anomaly tucked in the routine? A repeat too neat? A timing that feels like a knock at the door? If it were mapping, what could it map? Not roads or names, but fields of force and habit. The strength of our shield against the solar wind. The softness of our air at dawn, at noon, at night. The spacing of our lights, their pulse after storms. The way our planet rings when a meteor thread needles the upper sky. Data, not drama. The kind of map a scientist would draw, clean and spare. A blueprint of how a world holds together. Over open water, the comet is invisible except as a rumor in the instruments. The sea below is black and silver, a memory of the moon's pull. The world's largest radio dishes turn like slow flowers. High on a mountain, frost forms along a handrail outside a dome. The air thin and quiet. The stars so many that the mind has to choose which to hold. Somewhere, a person walking home from a late shift looks up and feels a small awe. The kind that does not upset sleep, but smooths it down. By now the chapter has gathered its own pace. A drift, a pause, a quiet step forward. The question remains, but it does not tighten the chest. It opens the window. The traveler writes with motion. We read with instruments and with wonder. The page of the sky is wide. The ink is faint but true. Tonight the comet crosses another. Small degree, its tail a blur, its core a point. The trajectory is updated. The orbit holds. The numbers settle into the log. In the control room, someone yawns and feels grateful to be tired in the service of a clear thing. In homes and dorm rooms and hospital lounges, listeners rest in a cradle of silence with a voice in their ear. And the voice does not argue or warn. It simply points and names, then lets the naming fade. If the visitor is only ice, it is still beautiful. If it is a messenger, the message is gentle. If it is neither, it is still a chance to practice looking. That may be the secret lodged in the glow. How to see without pressing, how to ask without shouting, how to wait and let an answer arrive in its own size and time dot. The dot slides toward the edge of the horizon and grows softer with the haze. The earth turns. The instruments settle. Their fans low, their sensors cool. The traveler goes on. The silence deepens, and in that soft silence, there is something waiting, not loud. Not urgent, just a presence you can almost hear. Like a question taking shape, just beyond the reach of words. A thin line of light moves across a screen, steady as a heart at rest. In a quiet control room, monitors glow, painting faces in silver and blue. Star maps boom. Orbit plots lay down curved threads, a cosmic dance of dots and lines. The visitor they are watching 3IATL ascides toward perihelion. Its path looks simple from a distance, but up close the curve is full of tiny decisions, each one written by gravity's patient hand. The narrator speaks in a calm hush, like a guide in a planetarium. Gravity pulls like tidewater, tugging the comet's trajectory in smooth arcs. The sun is the main author here, but the planets, like careful editors, add small notes in the margins. Jupiter leans in with mass. Earth adds a faint brushstroke. Even the solar wind presses, a gentle veil against the ancient traveler's face, pushing the tail into a luminous haze. Analysts test models and let the numbers breathe. Each variable lives in a track of its own mass, spin, outgassing, radiation pressure, then folds back into the hole. Residuals scatter across a dark field. When a point sits a hair off the line, no one panics. In science, a small drift is a polite request for a closer look. Is it the sun's warmth lifting gas from shadowed ice? A jet that flickers only when a certain face times? Or simply the pressure of light on a broad, bright surface? A telescope waits under mountain stars. Starlight pours through thin air, through glass polish to hold a piece of night. A spectrograph waits like a stethoscope for the sky, splitting light into quiet rainbows. Sodium lines, water traces, dust, each is a letter in a language the comet carries from far away. Hey Jude, the comet carries from far away. It says, I am rock and ice and history. It says, I am a messenger. It says, listen to the faintest part of the light. Back in the room, the team lays two other curves on the screen. One, I, Oumuamua. Two, I, Borisov. The first was a puzzle long, thin, maybe sheet-like nudged by sunlight in a way that ignored easy rules. The second looked familiar, a breath of dust and a tail like a drifting shadow. Side by side, the three tracks form a quiet chorus. Familiar physics sings the melody, orbit, perihelion, gravity. But in the harmony, there is also a whisper of anomaly, a note that might be nothing more than how and when the ice wakes. Numbers fill the air like lullabies. A line of best fit is a patient song. Error bars are soft blankets, wrapping each point so it doesn't feel alone. When they tighten, hope rises. When they widen, patience returns. A senior analyst moves a slider by a fraction. Another analyst checks the cadence of residuals, listening for a hidden signal buried in the data, a rhythm too even to be chance and too fragile to declare. Repetition becomes a theme. Earth turns. Tides come and go. If the route sketches a blueprint, perhaps. Repetition is the ink passes that rhyme and timing in place. It could be clockwork, yet the mind is a lantern. When it catches a pattern, it leans closer. The film slows further. A hand floats over a map of Earth, cities bright as ember clusters. Subsea cables cross oceans like pale threads. Mountain chains lift their long backs into moonlight. Fault lines lie asleep, patient as stone. The voice is gentle. If someone wanted to understand a fortress, they might walk the walls at different hours, listening for hollow spaces. A comet cannot listen as we do, but light can. Gravity can. Even a trajectory can be a question, sent to a planet to see how it answers dot at the observatory. A breeze threads the rails with a low hum. A technician notes time, seeing, and dome temperature. The spectrograph gathers another hour of starlight. A child somewhere points at a moving spark. In the control room, every new data point joins the family, another bead on a string. The arc grows clearer, as if a drifting shadow were deciding to become a shape. Comparisons continue. If this were one eye, would the non-gravitational push be larger? By now, if it were two eye, would the dust coma be broader? Someone runs a model with a different albedo. Someone else adjusts the spin state. The sun remains the center, but small forces ask for attention. The solar wind again, a jet that wakes at dawn along a crater rim. Radiation pressure that nudges bright surfaces more than dark. Each idea sits in the light, then joins the story, or returns to the shelf, A comet turns its face to the sun and writes vapor into space. That vapor writes gravity, a tiny letter. Add enough letters and the path bends. Telescopes read. Spectrographs read. Satellites read the solar wind like a slow book. In quiet reading, the unexplained softens. The film imagines futures. Perhaps 3IATLAS proves ordinary ice, dust, a soft plume, a patient curve around the sun and away. Perhaps it carries a small surprise, a steady jet that marks a rhythm. A forbidden pattern that turns out to be a temperature effect we have not modeled well. The voice never alarms. What matters is listening. Listening is how science turns fear into maps. Dawn unrolls along the desert. The telescope roof opens like a quiet lid. Observers step outside and meet the cold. Above them, the visitor is a pale stitch in the fabric of morning. Down below, computers save the night's memory. Another layer of paint on a careful portrait. Light speaks without shouting. A signal would be timing polarization. Tiny accelerations that follow warming and cooling on a rotating face signs of a surface and a spin. A story written in frost and sunshine. Night returns. The room settles into instrument glow. Orbits on the wall seem to breathe. The senior analyst compares today's curve with last week's, then with a synthetic curve built from guessed jets and grains. The match improves. The difference shrinks to a whisper. A model is not truth. It is a bridge from what we see to what we think is their dot in the final minutes. The film drifts over the path again, that patient arc guided by mass and time. It is the same arc we have always known, and yet it feels new because this traveler has come from the wide dark, the place between stars, where nebulae bloom and supernova leave ash. We live under a great dome, and it is open. If a blueprint hides here, it is traced with light and read with care, not fear. The line on the screen dims. Outside, the real comet continues across the high cold. In the hush, a question remains gentle. Not urgent like a candle in a window. What feature on Earth, if any, has this traveler circled in its silent passing? The thought rests there, soft as a feather on water, and in the deep quiet that follows, the world seems to lean in, listening for an answer carried by starlight that has not yet arrived. The night sits like a calm lake. A soft glow lies over the valley, and a ring of radio dishes turns with slow care. Petals of steel facing the dark. Bearings breathe. Cables murmur. In that cradle of silence, the planet's small noises fade. Far above, along a long, cold orbit, an ancient traveler slides on its trajectory. A comet, dust-wrapped and pale, writes a thin line through starlight that most eyes will never see. We do not watch it with eyes alone. We listen. Receivers wake and hold the sky in open hands. On our screens, wide static smooths into faint hills of power. The solar wind plays the coma like a drum, low and slow. Charged particles hum where the ion tail meets the field, a quiet chord that lingers. The signal is not a word, and it has rhythm, a cosmic whisper moving through the room like breath. Optical telescopes add their notes. Mirrors feed scattered light to a spectrograph, and color splits into careful lines. Watermarks appear, then oxygen, then small signs of organic simple chains, fragile goods made in cold workshops far from any nearby nebula. Minerals glow by their rules. From these marks we read a chemistry story. Ice mixed with dust, carbon, and rock, memory packed tight since before oceans on Earth. Time becomes the main tool. We watch when jets flare and when they sleep. Outgassing is like tiny thrusters that breathe, pushing the nucleus bit by bit. A nudge today means a new path. Tomorrow, the trajectory redrawn in pencil, not ink. The logs grow in neat rows. Timestamps, angles, weather. Out of that order, a temptation appears, a repeating tick, a rise and fall that keeps returning. Coincidence is the first guess, and often the safest thought. Imagine the night shift. The room is dim, the racks hum, the air holds a clean chill. You sip coffee and watch a graph crawl across the screen. Outside, the dishes keep their pose, slow creatures listening to the endless night. Then a small peak climbs above the noise. You have seen peaks before, but this one returns when the comet crosses a certain slice of sky, patient as tide. Listening means more than one note. The receivers hear the Milky Way's soft roar, the steady clocks of pulsars, the hiss of the solar wind. They hear us too. Earth leaks radio like warmth from a window. Old long-wave stations still push gentle swells. Short-wave signals skip off the atmosphere and circle the globe. Satellites speak. Ground answers. Even when we rest, lightning makes its own chorus. The sky carries our storm bursts like drums in fog. What would a traveler meet at our edge? First, the magnetic shield, a cloak thrown wide by day and stretched into a long tail at night. Particles stream along field lines and paint light across the polar sky. Auroras hang like a gentle veil in green and violet. Beneath them, cities glow. Points of gold over continents, strands of white tracing roads, ports bright as small suns. To any watcher, our outline is obvious. This is not a warning. It is a bedtime thought experiment. If a harmless stranger wished to map a planet, it could watch how radio waxes with the day, how storms thicken the ionosphere, how the magnetosphere bends with a gust of solar wind. It could notice when a grid falters and returns, how a harbor wakes at dawn, how highways sparkle at rush hour. From simple light and faint noise, it could sketch our habits with a soft pencil. A comet is not a machine. It is ice, dust, and stone under sunlight. But these simple things have voice. When one face warms, jets rise. When shadow falls, they rest. The spin wobbles. The path shifts by a hair. Instruments feel what eyes cannot. Astronomers call it non-gravitational acceleration. It is common. It shows how small forces write long stories. Every comet is both messenger and mirror, harbinger and teacher. The control room carries its own weather. A printer breathes. A pencil rolls and stops. Someone notes that seeing is good and wind is low. The model predicts a level. The reading lands close, then drifts. The drift is inside error, yet the same curve appears on later nights. Patterns can trick, and patterns can teach. The work is to learn which is which without hurry. Put the tools on the table. A telescope gathers starlight and reveals shape. A spectrograph turns color into chemistry. A radio dish cups the dark and measures the faintest energy as number. The dust tail bends with solar wind. The ion tail points away from the sun like an arrow. Both are brush strokes across the sky. An orbit is not a perfect circle. It is a living path, adjusted by heat, pressure, and time. Analysts test correlations with patient hands. Does the tick align with our own transmissions or satellite schedules? With the angle of the magnetic field measured by spacecraft? Early answers say no, which is good. The rhythm seems to belong to the visitor. Still, the questions were worth the hours. Questions mark the trail we choose through the forest of facts. They show what we hoped to find and what we learned instead. Think of exoplanets. We watch a star and wait for a tiny dip when a planet crosses its face. The world is not seen, yet its shadow tells size and year. Small effects can carry great truths. So when a shy, repeating shift rises from a distant comet, we resist drama. We test the antenna. We check the code. We ask a colleague to repeat the steps. Clear answers appear only after patience has done its slow work. Wind ruffles the cables. The dishes hold their aim. Up there, the nucleus turns rough and uneven, a dark stone in a pocket. Sunlight hits a pocket of volatile ice. A jet jumps up, then fades. Another patch wakes later. The pattern that teased us may be only the surface turning in and out of day. If true, that is still a gift. Rhythm reveals shape. Shape hints at history. History points toward the place where this traveler began. The sky lightens at the edges. The valley shifts from black to deep blue. Birds offer single notes, spaced like points on a graph. Drives hum as files save. Someone steps outside and draws in the thin cold. The comet is not visible, but we know where it is, a quiet mark of an orbit among millions, steady as a slow clock. The old stories rest. The new story breathes. If the comet were listening, what would it learn? The crackle of our storms, carried in long waves. The flicker of our lights, blinking with weather and work. The strength of our magnetic shield, bending the solar wind into art and sound. Perhaps that would be enough to know us a little, not our names or fears, only our outline against the dark. The thought is gentle. It turns the mind towards sleep and makes space for hope. The instruments power down in a soft sequence. Fans slow, monitors dim. Outside, the dishes wait for the next command, patient as stones. High above, the ancient traveler continues, wrapped in a gentle veil that shines when the sun finds it. The data remain on their drives, calm as numbers waiting to be read. Somewhere in them a small rhythm rests, perhaps only the spin of ice and dust, perhaps a key trying. Lock in a great quiet door. No one chases the answer tonight. The room empties. The air warms. The sky, which needs no witness, keeps moving. Yet the listeners feel it, a fullness in the silence, as if the dark remembered the song it just carried. Gravity will write the next line slow and sure. And in the drifting quiet, one could almost sense that another secret was about to reveal itself. The night is quiet, and the sky writes in slow silver strokes. Far above, a comet glides, an ancient traveler moving along a curve that looks simple from the ground. Yet every point on that curve is a conversation. Gravity is speaking. The sun pulls first and strongest, shaping the broad arc. Planets, like patient dancers, add their own small tugs. Even the moon plays a part, turning Earth's seas and adding a faint rhythm to the space around us. What we see as one smooth line is really a braid of many hands, each guiding the traveler through the soft glow of starlight. In observatories, the screens breathe with data. A telescope follows the drifting shadow, frame by frame. A spectrograph splits the faint light into quiet color, a rainbow whisper that tells us about dust, ice, and gas. Astronomers mark the trajectory with dots and dates, then let software thread them into an orbit. The curve settles into place like a river through a valley. Nothing hurried, no omen, just Newton and time. You can almost hear the low hum of servers and the plastic click of keys, a modern lullaby inside a bright room wrapped by the cradle of silence outside. Gravity's rules are not loud. They do not shout, they persuade. A mass attracts another mass. The pull grows stronger as distance shrinks. The path that results in orbit is a promise the traveler keeps unless nudged. When it swings near the sun, the curve tightens. When it drifts far, the curve relaxes. This is the language of ellipses and periods, of perihelion and aphelion spoken without words. It is steady, timeless, and deeply human to trust. What fell yesterday will fall today, and tomorrow. Yet the universe loves a soft surprise. Now and then, a trace of difference appears. A dot lands just off the expected track, not far, only a hair's breadth to the side. That tiny shift can mean the traveler felt something extra. Perhaps sunlight pressed on it like a hand on a door, a pressure called radiation that, over time, makes a real change. Perhaps jets of vapor hiss from warm patches on the nucleus, outgassing like small thrusters steering a silent ship. Or perhaps the unexplained nudge came from something hidden, a faint fragment nearby, a companion that does not shine dot to sort these stories. Scientists test 1,000 small what-ifs. They let simulations flow like tidewater across the screen, each run starting with the same measured position and speed, then adding a single difference, a gentle jet here, a tiny push there, a pause in dust, a turn in spin. The result is a fan of possible futures, a soft peacock tale of trajectories. The goal is not to force a fit, but to find the quietest explanation that holds. The best answer is often the most patient one, the curve that needs the fewest extra pushes to match the sky. Even simple pushes reveal deep things. If outgassing steers the comet, the steering depends on mass. A light, fluffy body feels the jet more than a heavy, solid one. So a measured sidestep, over weeks, whispers about density, how tightly the traveler is packed. The same sidestep, repeated in a repeating rhythm, hints at rotation. A spinning nucleus exposes new warm patches to the sun, turning on and off. Invisible thrusters. In this way, one thin line on a chart becomes a story about weight, spin, and surface. Light curves add texture to that story. As the traveler rotates, bright spots and dark patches turn toward us and away, lifting and lowering the glow we record. A gentle rise, a gentle fall, night after night. If the pattern carries a second smaller beat, a soft syncopation, it may be the mark of a hidden companion circling close. A binary pair would wobble around their shared center, their dance recorded in the timing of the shine. We listen for that wobble, the way one listens for a second heartbeat under a first. Gravity is also a lens. When the comet passes near a planet, the planet bends its path as expected and also bends time's schedule. Arrivals shift by minutes and by seconds, and precise clocks take note. A well-placed flyby can feel like a fingertip nudge or a firm turn, the difference between a whisper and a wave. Spacecraft use this on purpose, a gravity assist to gain speed without fuel. Comets experience it as fate. If a traveler meets two such turns in a row, the compound effect can be large. But each step is still a curve written in the old script. Other forces write finer letters. The solar wind, a steady breath of charged particles, strokes a comet's tail and sometimes its path. The magnetized flow can push dust one way and ions another, painting a forked banner that flutters against the dark. In strong storms, that wind thickens. In quiet times, it thins. Over many orbits, the average push may vanish. In a single pass, it can matter. Near the sun, general relativity adds a subtle twist, a tiny extra precession in the orbit that is part of the deep grammar of space. The corrections are small, but real, like the weight of handwriting on a page. If this traveler were only ice and dust, these details would be enough. But the mind lingers on a question shaped by wonder, not fear. What if someone or something wanted to learn about our planet the way we learn about comets? Not to harm, but to understand. How would gravity help in that? A patient mapper could watch how Earth's pull changes the traveler's curve and learn about our mass, the distribution of it, the slight tug from the moon. It could note when a distribution of it, the slight tug from the moon. It could note when could ye meet. Our magnetosphere swells during a solar storm, when our upper air warms and rises, when the aurora shivers like a gentle veil dot. It could also watch us. From far out, our nights are stitched with city lights, a net of quiet sparks. A passing body, watching with the same calm patience we use, might notice how our grids answer the solar wind, how our radio towers sing into the dark, how our satellites move in lanes like fireflies. Gravity would not show those human things directly, but timing would. Tiny differences in the traveler's path could line up with times when Earth's environment changes. To us, it is a map of influences. To a mapper, it might look like the outline of a soft, living fortress. A fortress is more than stone. Earth's walls are magnetic, where field lines arch like harp strings, electric, where storms crackle across continents, atmospheric, where winds ring the planet in slow waves. We have made walls too. Rules, wires, paths, and routines. If a stranger tested these, it would not need force. It would only need to watch. The test would be simple. Nudge the curve and see which parts of the system hum in reply. The beauty and the caution is that such a test can be performed by simply being there, arriving with the right timing, letting physics carry the message. Yet most travelers are not messengers. They are memories, loose, fragile pieces from a cold place beyond the planets, drifting through the galaxy like soft seeds on a solar wind. Their chemistry links to the birth of the solar system. Their shapes come from slow collisions and long sleep. When they wake near the sun, they shed a luminous haze and write a temporary script across our sky. The script fades as they leave. We are left with the data, the quiet lines, the plots that only move when someone breathes on the glass. What remains after the plots is a feeling. From how simple rules draw such rich patterns. Hope, from how well we can read them. A gentle fear, not of harm, but of misunderstanding, of missing a lesson that was there in the curve all along. Gravity writes in curves, because curves are kind to travelers. They bend without breaking. They carry without shoving. And for those who listen, they say more than enough. In the end, the comet keeps its promise to the sun and slips onward, the arc softening in the distance. The screens dim. The room grows still. And in that drifting quiet, one can almost feel the faintest nudge still waiting to be understood. Near perihelion, the sun lifts its face and the comet answers. Ice that slept for ages begins to breathe. A soft glow gathers around the nucleus, as if an ancient traveler were wrapped in a gentle veil. Jets awaken like small fountains, and dust drifts outward in slow silver snow. Starlight scatters through the haze. The tail lengthens, pointing away from the sun, a brushstroke across the sky. The scene feels simple. Rock warming, steam rising, light pouring through it. Perihelion is only a point in the orbit, yet it feels like a stage. Here, heat becomes a tool. The surface splits along tiny seams. Vapor escapes through cracks. Grains of mineral lift and float. Every puff is a push. Each push is a change in motion, small but real, a whisper against the trajectory. Models that once fit the path now ask for new terms. Astronomers correct for these forces the way a sailor accounts for wind and tide. What begins as a glow becomes a laboratory. Telescopes gather light from the coma, and the spectrograph splits it into a quiet rainbow. Peaks and lines reveal water. Turn to vapor, carbon-rich molecules, and fine dust. The picture is not loud. It is patient. With each hour near the sun, the data thickens one soft layer at a time until the ground beneath becomes clear. The solar wind plays its part. Invisible, it moves like a steady breath from the star, and the tail answers. Dust forms one stream. Charged gas forms another, thin and blue in photographs. Where the wind bends, the tail bends. Where the wind grows, the tail thins. A comet is a weather vane for space, and perihelion brings the gusts. Magnetic fields drape the haze. Sometimes the tail kinks and reconnects, an odd twitch that feels alive, though it is only physics at work. Inside the glow, the nucleus turns. Sunlit slopes heat, shaded valleys rest. Jets switch on and off as the world spins. This makes a subtle torque. It can speed the spin or slow it, and it can aim the vents like tiny thrusters. The effect is small, a feather on a river. But time makes small things large. Tracking teams revise the curve and compare the new arc to the new sky until the predictions are steady to trust. To the eye, nothing here is a threat. The tone of the night stays gentle. The comet is not a weapon. It is a study in sunlight. Yet, the mind wanders because curiosity is part of the human map. If someone wanted to learn about a planet from the outside, this would be a useful moment. Cross the inner system, warm near the star, shed a little mass, and watch how the field of forces replies. The sun gives the power. The visitor only needs to listen. Listening in space means measuring. You learn from the way radiation pressure pushes fine grains into long, faint curtains. From the minute a jet fires and the hour it sleeps. From the day, the spin shifts by a breath. You also learn from the light itself. A spectrograph translates starlight into lines and colors, telling what flavor the vapor has, what grains the dust holds, and how old the ice might be. Small clues gather into a quiet picture dot in calm rooms. Researchers check for non-gravitational motion. They give it plain names: outgassing along the sun, across the sun, and out of the orbital plane. At perihelion, nudges come in clusters. This is how a traveler changes its view, not with engines, but with breath. 1,000 exhales, arranged by sunlight, can move a path more than a human eye expects. We keep in mind the fragile pieces. Dust can coat solar panels on small spacecraft. Fine grains charge in sunlight and slide along field lines like slow sparks. If the comet crosses a telescope sight, its glow paints the detector with a brief, milky smear. None of this is danger. It is simply the sky being full. Photons from the sun, particles from the wind, gravity from nearby mass. Each is a strand. The comet feels all of them and replies with a tail that writes its answer across the dark. If the idea of mapping returns, and it does, because mystery grows in quiet perihelion, would serve the plan. The visitor could sample the engine of the solar wind and compare it to echoes from a planet's magnetic shield. It could watch how light reflects from oceans and ice, from cities and deserts. It could log when our radio noise rises and falls, as if the planet were breathing through antennas. None of this proves intent. It only shows what a patient observer might notice by paying attention. Perihelion also shows how a trajectory can curve without surprise. Heat turns to gas. Gas turns to thrust. Thrust turns to change. The arc shifts by a measurable degree, and every update makes the future path a little clearer. This calm cycle is the opposite of omen. It is the comfort of cause and effect. You could almost fall asleep to it. Model, compare, revise like waves moving in and out under the moon. Sometimes, though, the data offers a small anomaly, a spike, where none was expected, a dip that lingers, a kink in the tail that repeats. These are humble questions, not alarms. They invite longer looks and softer eyes. Are we seeing a new jet waking on the far side? Are we watching charged dust react to a quiet change in the magnetic field? Or are we catching coincidence and calling it design? The night is long enough for slow thought. People often ask what a comet means. In science, meaning comes last. We let the measurements pile up. We compare this visitor to others and see what patterns hold. The meaning also comes from us. We are the ones who stand under the brushstroke of the tail and feel awe. We are the ones who hear a cosmic whisper in the hum of equipment. The planet is large. Our lives are small, yet together they share a room, and in that room, a traveler can seem like a messenger, even when it is only sunlight at work. Near the sun, the nucleus loses mass. It leaves a thin trail of memory behind. Some dust may drift for years. Some grains may fall into orbits of their own and later light the sky as gentle meteors. Even that is a kind of writing. It is as if the comet signed his name and moves on. The signature is not for us, but we read it anyway, because reading the sky is one of the oldest things we know how to do. The camera pulls back. The comet shrinks to a pearl, then to a pale dot. Its path swings through the inner system with grace. Numbers keep time. Instruments keep watch. The tone stays calm. If there is a survey here, it is quiet. If there are notes, they are kept without hurry. Somewhere deep in the glow, jets still whisper, and the nucleus turns like a slow clock. The sun throws light across everything, and the space between things becomes visible. In that space, a thought lingers. Perhaps this is ordinary warming breath on a cold morning, rising and fading into blue. Or perhaps something is taken careful notes, testing how light, wind, and magnetism shape a living world. The scene closes without an answer. The tail thins. The glow softens. The traveler drifts on, leaving behind a path that looks simple at a glance and complex up close. And the silence deepens. Yet, hidden in that silence is something waiting to be understood. A thin blue line circles the planet like a halo, a soft glow against the endless night. From orbit, it looks delicate, fragile, yet it holds the first stories of everything that falls from space. Meteors skim this boundary and turn to whispers. Dust from a comet's long orbit brushes the sky and becomes a brief streak, a drifting shadow that fades before you can point. This is the first hidden gate, where cold stone meets warm breath, where starlight bends through air that keeps us safe. Scientists give names to the layers, simple steps in a quiet climb. The troposphere holds our weather, moving like slow rivers of air. Above it, the stratosphere spreads thin and still. Ozone there filters harsh light. The mesosphere rises cooler and darker, a lonely band where most meteors burn to ash. Higher, the thermosphere glows in the touch of the sun and solar wind. At last, the exosphere thins to almost nothing and hands the sky back to space. When a tiny stone arrives from space, its speed is great, but its voice is soft. It presses against the air and warms the skin of the sky. Gas lights up. Molecules split and join. The trail becomes a thin line of plasma. To the eye, this is a quick flash. To instruments below, it is a clear signature. Radar sees the ionized trail and marks its path like ink. Radio receivers hear a bell-like ping as signals bounce off the streak. All sky cameras catch the arc of light and measure its brightening and fade. Arrays across continents listen together. In quiet fields, a radar dish turns with patient grace. On a snowy ridge, a telescope tracks a faint meteor, its spectrograph splitting light into reds and greens to taste the dust. Near a desert, an infrasound sensor waits for a low note, the long rumble of a fireball. Each device keeps time with the rest. The planet becomes a single ear, listening for a cosmic whisper. A net weaves itself in the dark, not to trap the sky, but to hear it. The atmosphere protects without anger. Oxygen and nitrogen share the work of slowing small stones. Most meteoroids end their long journey here, released as heat and light that paint the night. High above, wings twist the glowing trails. Gravity waves ripple through the mesosphere, the way circles spread from a dropped pebble. Scientists read those ripples to learn how air moves at heights no plane can visit for long. A meteor is not only a visitor, it is a probe that leaves a record behind. Auroras rise higher still in the ionosphere, where the thermosphere warms at the sun's request. Charged particles ride Earth's magnetic field lines toward the poles and spill into thin air. Curtains begin, sheets of green, soft violet at the edges, a silent river that folds and unfolds. The colors are chemistry turned to art: oxygen giving green and red, nitrogen the purple glow. The solar wind is the brush. The planet is the canvas. If someone wished to test our shield, they would not need force. A faint swarm of dust could be enough. A traveler, a quiet messenger, natural or not, might watch how each grain writes in the sky. Does the trail last a heartbeat or a minute? Does it drift north or south? How fast does it fade? From those details, one can learn temperature, wind, and the density of the high air. Satellites feel this too. Their orbits shift when the sun stirs the thermosphere. In this way, the atmosphere speaks back, a soft, steady reply. On the ground, the system never sleeps. All sky cameras drink starlight all night and compare one night to the next. Machine learning becomes a quiet helper, trained to find the thinnest line and ignore the blink of a plane. Meteor radars send needles of radio upward and wait for echoes. Weather balloons rise on their own missions, carrying small sensors that feel the climb through troposphere and stratosphere, and sometimes share a glimpse of a meteor trail as they pass. There is a boundary many people name the Kármán line, around 100 kilometers up, where flight gives way to orbit. Yet the real edge is not a cliff, but a slope. It changes with season, with the 11-year beat of the sun, with the pulse of noon and midnight. When a strong storm blows from our star, the thermosphere enlarges and breathes deeper. Satellites dip lower and drag grows. Engineers listen, adjusting trajectories to stay safe. Meteor showers tell stories written long ago. A comet in a long, cold trajectory leaves crumbs of rock and ice behind. Earth crosses that trail on schedule, year after year. The shower peaks, and the sky is sprinkled with silver strokes. People make wishes. Scientists make counts. From the counts, they find changes in our own air. Is the magnetosphere a little warmer this year? Are high-altitude winds bending a new way? The meteors answer. With their fading times and paths in daylight, the work continues, even if you cannot see it. Radar shows the invisible. A forward scatter receiver notices a steady broadcast grow bright, then dim, as a meteor trail forms, acts as a brief mirror, and fades. Thousands of such small echoes turn into a map of the sky's behavior. It is a gentle kind of cartography. No one digs or drills. We ask the sky to speak, and it does, in short. Syllables our instruments can read. Sometimes a larger stone arrives, and the air sings a different note. A bolide flares and breaks, and people look up at noon as if a camera flash went off in the sky. Windows shake. The infrasound network, spread across oceans and continents, hears that low song and traces the path. Later, fragments may be found, dark and heavy, holding minerals older than our rivers. Even then, the atmosphere has done its work, spent the speed, softened the blow, kept the ground safe more often than not. High above weather and plains, the ionosphere bends radio waves like a slow lens. Navigators learn its moods. Satellites give us time and place, but radio still rides the sky, and the sky still shifts. Solar storms change the ionosphere's shape. The quiet net of sensors notices and updates the models. You might never hear the math, but you feel the result. Maps that stay true, systems that keep time, calls that reach across a valley. The story of the atmosphere is balance. It shields and it reveals. It burns and it glows. It hides Earth from some cosmic rays and yet offers the heavens a way to write messages we can read. A comet's dust becomes a sentence we can translate. A meteor's ion trail is a note on the staff of the upper air. A curtain of aurora is a painting made of charged particles and gas. The tools are many: telescope, spectrograph, radar, balloon butt. The aim is gentle, to understand and to be ready. At night, under a dark hill and whisper of pines, a person may look up and see a single meteor crossed like a brushstroke across the sky. For a moment, the mind drifts to far places, a nebula lit from within, an exoplanet circling a small star, a galaxy cluster scattered like jewels. Then the streak is gone, leaving a trace that instruments will follow for another minute, until it fades into the cradle of silence. The earth keeps turning. The first gate keeps watch. Higher than the glow. Beyond the last thin breath of air, something else surrounds the planet, an unseen shape that guides the aurora and steers the charged land. It is quiet, like a compass that never sleeps. The edge of air rests beneath it, a soft sea under a sky of lines. In that layered calm, the night grows deeper, and the world listens for the faintest echo, wondering what it will learn from the next gentle whisper that brushes our fragile blue rim. The planet wears a field like a cloak, and tonight that cloak hums low, the soundless note of a deep cello stretched from pole to pole. In the quiet, the magnetosphere rises from the dark like a gentle veil, compressed on the day side by the solar wind, drawn into a long drifting shadow on the night side. Field lines arc up and away, invisible threads that starlight cannot show, but instruments can feel. They loop and sway as if playing a slow cosmic dance. If you could watch them with your own eyes, they would look like luminous heartstrings, plucked by the breath of the sun. Scientists trace these lines with satellites and with patient math. The old stories called them lines of force. Today, they are mapped as living curves. Near the equator, they bulge outward. Near the poles, they fall in like rain. In this soft geometry, charged particles spiral and bounce. They do not move in straight paths, but in tiny corkscrews, circling the field like beads on a wire. The motion is calm at first, a steady orbit. In a stable sky, around the planet hang two great rings of energy. The Van Allen belts, shaped like faint donuts stacked across the equator. In the inner belt, protons dream in long loops. In the outer belt, electrons drift like a slow river. Satellites pass through these regions on careful trajectories, their orbits chosen to balance safety and science. They ride the currents as sailors use tides, letting the field carry them. When the belts swell, instruments click more quickly. When they quiet, the cabin of space grows still again. It is not danger that fills the frame, but motion, a system breathing in and breathing out. Sometimes the sky above the sky changes key. A storm begins far away, in the face of the sun, when magnetic fields twist and snap. A cloud of plasma lifts and sails outward. Most days the solar wind is a steady stream. On some, it is a wave. When that wave strikes Earth's field, the cloak ripples. Pressure builds without sound. Graphs curve. Numbers rise. It feels from here on the ground like nothing at all, and yet the planet's magnetic heart has been tapped. A geomagnetic storm is not an explosion, but a long, low push, the kind you only notice by watching needles, lights, and the graceful arc of the aurora. Auroras answer the sky the way violin strings answer a bow. Over the poles, ovals of soft color wake and begin to flow. Oxygen whispers green at about 100 kilometers up. Higher, it can flush red like an ember. Nitrogen adds violet and blue at the edges, a faint shimmer where the curtain thins. Spectrographs split this glow into its quiet code, lines that tell a simple story. Which atoms are singing, how high, how warm, how long they hold the note. Under the aurora's slow waves, people stand with open mouths and say very little. Wonder is easier than language when the air itself becomes a painting. Above that painting, the magnetosphere has its own weather. Field-aligned currents stream down like ghostly rivers, connecting space to atmosphere. The ring current thickens then thins. In cusp regions near the poles, the field opens small windows. Through them, the solar wind can brush the upper air directly. There is no crash, only a steady contact, like two hands meeting and then holding. The planet answers with light and with radio. Lightning adds its own voice. Spherics and whistlers that travel along field lines, slipping from one hemisphere. to the other like a note on a long wire. Even when you sleep, the atmosphere hums with a faint chorus, the Earth's radio whisper. That whisper does not stay on Earth. It leaks outward into space, a halo of sound too low for ears but not for antennas. Nearby spacecraft hear auroral kilometric radiation spill into the night. Very low-frequency transmitters, meant for ships. And submarines paint long strokes across the magnetosphere. A distant traveler, an asteroid sliding past, a comet on a new trajectory. An ancient traveler from a far-off nebula could sense these strokes the way we sense starlight with a telescope. To measure the field, you can watch the lights. To sense the seams, you can listen for the radio that clings. To those lines like mist dot, beyond the sun's weather lie other breaths. The galaxy carries slower winds, supernova's ash in the form of cosmic rays, sometimes softened by the solar cycle, sometimes pressing harder. Pulsars spin and send out needles of energy. A heartbeat that arrives here is a tiny change in background noise. Most days, those signals are no more than dust in a beam. But on rare days, they are one more hand on the cloak, a gentle extra pull. Instruments record. Forbush decreases, dips in cosmic ray counts after a solar outburst. And in the pattern of those dips, you can read the size of the heliosphere's shield. A system of shields inside a larger shield layers like nested balls, each protecting what lies beneath. Earth's field is a shield, yes, but also a storyteller. In the 1800s, a great storm opened the auroras to latitudes where few had seen them. Telegraph wires crackled. Some worked without batteries and all powered by the air. In 1989, currents induced by a geomagnetic storm flowed through long power lines, and a grid far to the north fell quiet for hours. These events are not common, and their memory is not meant to frighten. They are lessons in scale. When space moves long conductors, the great cables and lines we build can become instruments themselves, playing unwanted notes. Engineers listen now with magnetometers on the ground, measuring the slow sway of the field and planning power flows like careful choreography. Could a distant traveler map our scene from that music? If you were out there, listening, you could. Learn where the field opens most easily and where currents run most strongly along the ground. You might watch how auroral ovals widen during storms, how they edge toward the night. You might look for places where long lines cross ancient rock, where geology and technology meet. Even without intent, the pattern would reveal itself. A lattice of light, a graph of radio, a web of wires humming under the glow. Not a weakness so much as a fingerprint, the way Earth sings when the sun brushes it. Closer to home, small satellites drift through the belts and taste particle counts like weather stations taste rain. They log the pitch of waves in the plasma. See, hiss, chorus, and electromagnetic ion cyclotron waves, names that sound like lullabies and are, in truth, the planet's own bedtime songs. The data arrives as calm curves. Analysts smooth it and compare it to records from a dozen solar cycles. What was once an unexplained anomaly becomes a familiar tide. One more piece of the story that lets pilots, power operators, and astronauts plan their days. This is the quiet victory of study. Fear dissolves when patterns appear. If you step outside under clear starlight, you will not see the field. You will see the Big Dipper, a smear of the Milky Way, maybe a line of satellites, crossing like silver insects. But the field is there, holding off the solar wind by a distance greater than the Earth's radius, shaping a long tail that points away from the sun like a banner in a breeze. Somewhere within that tail, particles turn and return, trapped for hours before they slip away again. Somewhere at the poles, a ribbon brightens and then goes dark. In the cradle of silence, the system continues its patient work. Other worlds have fields of their own. Jupiter's is immense, a fortress lit by volcanic dust from Io. Its auroras burn in hard ultraviolet, fierce and bright. Saturn's is softer, braided with ring dust. Some exoplanets may carry fields strong enough to shield oceans, and one day, radio telescopes may catch their auroral murmurs from far across the stars. A magnetosphere can be a harbinger of habitability, a sign that air and water might endure. In that sense, Earth's magnetic veil is not only our cloak, it is our invitation to imagine neighbors. The chapter slows now, the way auroras fade near dawn. Field lines settle. The belts thin. Instruments hum in their housings like sleeping hearts. If a messenger ever reads our magnetic story, it will find not just seams and circuits, but the trace of hands and minds that learn to listen. The sky above the sky remains invisible to the eye, yet it is written everywhere in quiet gauges. In the soft glow over the poles, in the steady patience of those who watch, the cello note lingers, low and warm. It is easy to think it is silence, but if you lean into the stillness, you can feel the faintest pressure, as if a hidden question. We're passing, gentle and unhurried, looking for a place to rest. Beneath a meadow of soft grass, the ground keeps a careful secret. Roots lace the soil, pebbles rest in thin beds. And far below, stone holds a map of stress written over ages. Faults, ridges, and quiet fractures cross like fine lines on an old palm. By day, the surface seems certain. At night, under a soft glow of starlight, you can feel a faint pulse underfoot motion moving through the crust like a gentle, unending breath. Scientists learn to read that breath with instruments that sleep in the earth. A seismometer is simple. A heavy mass, a spring, and a way to trace motion so small it feels like a whisper. Thousands sit in deserts and forests, city lots and mountaintops, and on the ocean floor. In the cradle of silence below, they wait for a tap. Each one does not shout. It records. It lets the planet speak in lines. Those lines are waves, each with a habit. Some arrive first and pass through rock and liquid. Others move slower and avoid molten places. Some roll along the surface, like a gentle veil. When a quake begins, pulses leave in a quiet storm, and the network counts their order like heartbeats. From echoes, reflections, and timing, a picture grows a spectrograph for stone, turning motion into a calm, readable map. The crust seams are not flaws. They are part of how the planet works. Plates meet at boundaries that rim oceans and carve mountains. At ridges, new rock cools. At trenches, old rock sinks. Along long faults, blocks slide past in inches each year. These are the stitched edges of a drifting coat. Along them, small events gather into patterns. Here quick taps, their slow, steady sighs. Even when no quake strikes, Earth is never still. Ocean waves hit coasts and give the ground a steady hum. This microseism is a low note that carries across countries, a faint echo of water felt by stone. In that sound, researchers find more than noise. They see shallow layers beneath cities, watch seasons travel, and learn how far-off storms push energy into rock. The ground answers the ocean rhythm, and the network listens. Sometimes the sky taps the drumhead. A meteor arrives from the dark, a drifting shadow turned to fire by air. Most are small and fade. A few flare like a brief sun and break into shock waves that touch the ground. Sensors far apart feel the same soft slap, and signals line up across the map like stitches. A tap comes, the planet rings, and we read the ring with care as waves pass through many layers, bending and slowing along the way. If someone wanted to know our weak points, they might look for places that wake easily. In seismology, that often means regions where stress is built or where fluid loosens the lock between rocks. Deep under some ranges, pressure squeezes water from minerals. In subduction zones, a slow slip slides like a long breath, quiet but wide. Elsewhere, faults are stuck until they are not, and then they let go hard. The network sees all of it as patient, tiny changes. Think of a row of bells. Some are tight and bright. A touch makes them sing. Others are dull from cracks or damp. Strike, each with the same small stick, and listen. The notes change even if the stroke does not. Seismic networks do this with the planet, though the strike is tide, surf, wind, tiny quakes, and sometimes a messenger from space, a comet crumb or asteroid pebble. Each touch sends a pattern into rock, and differences reveal where seams lie. Waiting dot maps born from these tunes guide more than curiosity. Engineers use them to place bridges and dams. Cities choose where to anchor hospitals and power lines. Pipelines crossing long distances must know which gentle ridge is not so gentle underneath. The art is to balance awe and care, to see Earth as strong yet fragile, timeless yet changing. A good map is not an omen. It is a quiet light. Because ground is not uniform, waves curve and scatter. They reflect from layers like light from glass. They refract us through a soft lens. By comparing arrival times at May stations, scientists build tomographic images of slower and faster paths. A slow patch can hint at heat, fractures, or fluids. A fast patch may mean cool, dense rock. Faults appear as zones broad and feathery, or narrow and bright. The ocean floor is a chapter only recently read. Portable sensors rest on sediment and listen to the deep, tracing seams across basalt plains between ridges and trenches. On land, denser networks fill gaps left by older coverage. Forests, farms, and towns host stations that send quiet files to shared archives. So a person in one country can read motion under another, like a telescope catching starlight mist. Elsewhere, stone remembers direction. In some regions, rock stretches or compresses in neat alignment. Waves moving along that alignment travel faster than those moving across it. This anisotropy, like finding the grain in wood, adds another layer. It can show where stress has a preferred path and where a future break might choose to go. Such hints are not prophecies, soft arrows, useful and humble. The human hand leaves traces too. Freight trains murmur through the night, their rhythm like a metronome. Work in quarries, cheers in stadiums, and traffic that ebbs with daylight all make small marks. During quiet times, those marks fade and the Earth's older song grows clearer. Thus the map of stone becomes a map of life, showing not only weakness, but habit and care woven with where we build and how we move. A thought returns like tide. If a mapping mind exists somewhere, what would it do with such a picture? File the shapes of our seams, or wonder how we learned to hear them? Would it see our network and think of its own under a different nebula's soft glow? To the instruments, such ideas do not matter. They keep time and trace lines. Yet, in the still hours, listening feels like hope, a small light kept against. The endless night. The story of seams reaches beyond the crust. The mantle turns in slow rolls. The core spins and sends a magnetic field outward, a gentle shield against the solar wind. Above, telescopes watch orbit and trajectory, while spectrographs split starlight. Exoplanet systems may hum with their own microseisms. Somewhere, a supernova seeded both us and them with heavy elements. Stone, water, and sky belong to one chain. Back on the hill, grass leans in a breeze. Underground, a sensor waits. Far away, a small meteor slips into the atmosphere and coughs a signal that will reach this place in seconds. The wave arrives like a brushstroke turned inward an inward sky of rock and layer. The instrument notes it, tags it in memory, and sends the quiet file along a cable humming with the ordinary. Somewhere, A human opens that file and sees a trace as thin as a hair. Maps grow from such marks. They do not promise or threaten. They help. They say this road should curve here, this tower should anchor there, this old bridge needs a steadier base. They also say something softer, that the planet is alive in its way, that silence is full of motion, that listening is an act of care. If there is an anomaly, it is not that stone breaks. It is that we learn to hear the break forming and faint. Echoes long before it speaks aloud. Tonight, if you step outside, the stars are steady. Somewhere past the horizon, a comet moves, a messenger on a patient path. The ground beneath you is never still, yet it holds you, your steps, your home, your rest. It is a fortress because it is understood, and understanding turns fear into calm. The planet keeps its seams, and we keep our watch. In the drifting quiet, something waits to be understood. A slow arc of the planet turns beneath a cradle of silence. Night spreads like a gentle veil, and in that darkness, the continents bloom. From orbit, cities appear as constellations stitched to stone-soft glow, gathering into clusters, clusters into chains, chains into sprawling galaxies of human intent. Roads trace faint arteries, rivers hold a colder sheen. A single airport flares like a star at perigee, guiding invisible arrivals along careful trajectory. The camera lingers. You can almost hear the hush that follows a long day, the whisper of starlight sliding past solar panels, the patient hum of a world still. Awake. The view drifts. Grids unfold with calm geometry, bright at their cores and dimmer at their edges, like a nebula etched onto land. The rhythm is steady. Intersections glimmer, highways glow, neighborhoods pulse with smaller lights, porches, kitchens, bedrooms. Fiber lines run below like hidden rivers. Transformers pulse at the edges like small suns. Data centers mark themselves as neat rectangles of brightness, a human-made galaxy cluster with cooling towers breathing pale steam into the night air. There is no alarm here, only awe at the woven brightness, a tapestry of our days captured in the quiet of our nights. Instruments read the pattern, the way telescopes read a comet's tail. A sensor collects the light, a wide eye that neither blinks nor tires. A spectrograph could, in principle, split city glow as it splits starlight, the warm amber of high-pressure sodium, the cool clarity of newer LEDs, the mixed tones of passing headlights. What astronomers do with distant exoplanets, decoding atmosphere and motion through color, becomes, at this height, a domestic art. Our streets are spectra. Our neighborhoods are signatures. Everything has a line, a shade, a fingerprint. If a traveler watched us, a messenger from deep time, it could read these signatures as we read the sky. Outages would appear as sudden eclipses. Surges would look like small dawns. The grid's breath generation and demand would rise and fall with ritual grace. Morning stirs in waves. Evening gathers like a tide. Events paint short-lived halos over stadiums and fairs. Holidays sweep a continent with synchronized brightness. The pattern is not an omen, not a harbinger, but a cosmic whisper of routine. People meeting, machines resting, music winding down. There are anomalies too, and they are gentle teachers. A passing storm pushes a corridor of shadow across counties. As lines trip and reclose, crews roll out. Substations flicker. The map changes by degrees, never by supernova, and then settles back, calm as breath. In winter, the north leans into earlier glow. In summer, the west lingers in dusk. Over mountains, lights thin to fine dust. Over deserts, they fall away to single beads along a highway, a drifting shadow of civilization. The planet's face shows where it is fragile and where it breathes deep, and it shows it without worry. Look long enough, and a story emerges. Ports, mark themselves with deliberate clusters, cranes outlined like instruments beside dark water. The arteries that tie them inland are bright and straight, a comet trail that never burns out. Airports sketch long, precise lines, runways bright as rulers, taxiways like careful notes in a margin. Beyond them, suburbs feather outward, each cul-de-sac like a small spiral galaxy, each block a square star field. To map this is the map hour. Choices. To understand it is to sense the dream that built it. Inside a data center, the light is steady and cold. But from above, only its roof reports the truth. A rectangular signature, distinct and calm. Beneath, thousands of machines speak in quiet chorus. Memory moves, photos, promises, work, songs, the shared weight of the day. In the open air, cooling units parcel heat back to the night. The building shines not as a beacon, but as a page in a book we keep writing. If someone read the city like a spectrograph, they would hear this page hum with low notes, constant and kind. Substations sit at the junctions like patient watchmen. Their lines branch and braid, stepping voltage down, guiding it toward the small. Lamps of ordinary lives. Transformers murmur. A lone repair crew rolls out at midnight to replace a tired coil, their truck headlights painting the gravel with a private dawn. When a blackout comes, it arrives like a curtain, soft and sudden. When power returns, it rises like sunrise, street by street, room by room, until the grid is whole again. To some observer, those changes would say what matters. Warmth, safety, the promise the morning will come. Communications glow not in light, but in order. Fiber rings form silent loops under roads and riverbeds. Microwave towers blink in patient cadence along ridgelines, small red stars counting hours. From orbit, their presence is felt in the shape of lit corridors, in the way business districts keep heat even in late watches of the night. If a distant intelligence studied this pattern, as we study the faint lines of a far galaxy, it might guess our priorities without hearing a word. Hospitals hold steady brightness. Transit hubs breathe. Universities fade and flare with semesters. The planet's limb slips past, a soft arc under cosmic dark. Above, the Milky Way crosses the frame, a river of starlight wider than any highway. The comparison is irresistible. Our networks below, their networks above. Gravity, that old author, binds stars into families and cities into countrysides. In both maps, small structures form larger ones, and larger ones tell stories we can read if we move slowly. If we listen for the faint echo of meaning between the bright points, nothing here is frantic. The night is made for patience. At high latitudes, aurora folds and drapes in green sheets, painting the sky with a living spectrogram. The solar wind writes with a charged brush, and grids answer with the caution of experienced readers. Operators watch needles and graphs, their calm voices moving across the room like steady tides. The display wall glows with river lines of power. Substation symbols and weather overlays like a warning whispered from a storm 1,000 miles away. The system flexes, then eases, like a tree in wind. In its sway is the memory of storms past and the hope of quiet to come. Lights do more than mark targets. They carry stories. A town relights after fire, and the new pattern shows care in unexpected places. A coastal neighborhood dims after relocation, and the gap along the shore reads like a healed scar. A festival adds a temporary constellation to a small city, and for a week, the map tells of joy. Satellite frames stack these changes into a time-lapse of human resilience. Bright, dim, bright again. The result is not a chart of weakness, but a soft chronicle of needs and kindnesses met. And yet, viewed with clear eyes, the map reveals seams. It shows where a single line feeds many, where redundancy is thin, where a bridge holds more than traffic. It invites understanding, not fear. In that spirit, Planners draw new rings, add quiet backup lights, move substations from floodplains, and sink cables where winds cannot touch them. The pattern shifts. The story updates. The city learns to breathe more evenly at night, so the morning will not rush its heart. Far from land, where black is almost complete, a thin chain of moving points crosses open water. They are ships, each carrying its own small constellation bridge. Lamps, deck lights, the careful glow that keeps watch under endless sky. Along the coasts, ports twinkle. Tugs trace short comets through slips, and breakwaters curve like crescent moons. Between continents, unseen cables lie along ancient seabed routes, their presence known only when a distant shore flickers and a signal takes a longer road. The sea absorbs light and returns it as quiet, a memory held in waves. The planet continues its orbit. Clouds drift like a gentle veil across the scene, smudging brightness into a watercolor of cities and storms. Somewhere, a lone window remains lit, the last lamp in a building kept on for a reason known only to one person. The camera eases back. The continents shrink into a mild shimmer, and the oceans claim the frame with deep calm. The glow fades toward the horizon, leaving a question in its wake soft as breath, timeless as tide about what the darkness can hold, and what it might yet reveal when the night leans closer. The ocean is a library written in waves. At night, its surface holds a soft glow from the moon, a gentle veil spread across dark water. Tides rise and fall as if the planet breathes, a slow rhythm guided by the moon's orbit and the sun's distant pull. From far above, satellites trace the water's skin, watching tiny changes in height that drift like brushstrokes across the sky. In that quiet motion, patterns appear: currents winding, eddies turning, coastlines answering with foam. Anyone who listens closely can hear the water speak in pulses and echoes, a cradle of silence carrying stories in every swell. Deep below, a second language moves along the seafloor. Submarine cables hum with silent messages, strings of light crossing trenches and ridges the way constellations cross the night. They follow careful routes, around volcanoes, along continental slopes, through narrow straits that feel like doorways between oceans. Engineers once mapped those paths with sonar and ships, learning where rock softens and where currents bite. Now the lines are known like old roads. If a hidden visitor traced the ocean's chart, those cables would be bright thread supply lines humming, fragile and strong at the same time, like a whisper that never sleeps. Sensors float with patient grace. Buoys mark the surface, rocking gently, their antennas blinking at low horizons. Below them, Argo floats dive and rise, tasting temperature and salt in slow cycles, assembling profiles of the sea's memory. Gliders cruise like quiet fish, following planned trajectories, turning by tiny degrees. Sonar pings slide through the water and return with shapes: ridges, sand waves, the clean edge of a trench. The ocean answers with echoes, and computers translate echo into line, line into map. It is simple in spirit: send a sound, receive a sound, yet the picture grows vast. Like starlight building a galaxy from single points, storms leave their handwriting everywhere. A hurricane presses down the surface. The water dips, then rebounds, ringing with a tone too low for ears, but clear to machines. Tide gauges in small harbors take notes, each rise and fall a neat number in a quiet column. Tsunamis travel as long, low swells, crossing entire oceans with steady patience. Satellites sense them as tiny hills, altimeters counting centimeters to catch a wave moving at jet speed. When those waves reach the shelf, they stand up and show their face. Afterward, the records remain: pressure traces, times, paths of memory, kept with calm precision. On the western edge of the Atlantic, a river without banks pushes through the blue, the Gulf Stream. It is the ocean's soft breath, warm and fast. carrying heat north like a gift. Eddies spin off its flanks, perfect circles that drift like small galaxies, a cosmic dance of water and wind. From orbit, color sensors act like a spectrograph for the sea, reading chlorophyll and suspended dust in different shades. A telescope aimed at an exoplanet might search for seas the same way by light and hue. By the way, a surface scatters the sun. Here at home, that light maps the ocean's mood. Dot ports gather ships like schools of silver. At night they glow, cranes, moving in steady arcs, containers stacked in neat geometry. A patient watcher could learn our habits from that light. When the lanes fill, when a harbor rests, which choke points narrow the flow of trade. Straits are like valves, canals like carved, shortcuts, capes like elbows in a long arm. Currents and winds thread through all of it. A chart of movement ships, fuel, food data would look like a star map, bright clusters connected by faint arcs. To know the routes is to know the rhythms of a planet made busy by its own needs. Yet the sea keeps its secrets. The floor is broken by trenches that cut so deep the surface forgets them, by ridges that run like seams across a round world. Hydrothermal vents glow in the dark, chimneys breathing minerals into cold water, life curling around them like inked script. Earthquakes rattle the crust. Small landslides cloud the water in single valleys. A quiet volcano sends a plume that travels on, mile by mile. These are not omens, only the ocean's normal work. Still, there is awe in it, and a fragile kind. Of fear, because we live along edges, and edges can move. Instruments watch without blinking. A scattering radar reads wave height. A scatterometer feels wind on the sea skin. GPS buoys hold their place and tell us how the surface lifts under pressure. Gliders follow a trajectory like a line drawn by a careful hand. Later, when the data comes ashore, analysts pass it through models that turn math into motion. The map shows storm surge as pale fans entering rivers, show tsunamis as long bands crossing basins, show the Gulf Stream as a shimmering ribbon. The tone stays soft. This is knowledge that helps, a guide that points towards safer harbors. Where cables meet trenches, choices become delicate. Bury here or suspend there. Cross this slope or that flat. Protect the bend from rocks that grind. Redundancy acts as a shield. If one line sleeps, another wakes, carrying the load. Repair ships. Stand ready, their lights small beacons in the open dark. A patient stranger, real or imagined, might take note of these designs. The places where we've built in backups, the places where distance makes repair slow. But such notes would also reveal our strength. We learn, we adapt, we find new paths when old paths fail. That is the quiet promise beneath the map. It helps to remember that we too are travelers. Our satellites keep orbit the way a comet keeps its long path, circling with steady grace. They look down through cloud breaks and over nebula-like swirls of plankton blooms, decoding color the way astronomers decode starlight. A supernova in a far galaxy will never touch this water, and yet the same physics that shapes its light shapes the glare on a wave. In that symmetry, the ocean feels larger than a basin of salt and wind. It becomes a mirror, showing how small things add up sensor by sensor, line by line, into understanding. The tone of the sea is gentle tonight. On the windward side of an island, foam leans into rock and then nods away. In a quiet bay, a single buoy ticks a small light to say it is there. Far offshore, a cable lies still, sheathed and silent, while messages pass inside like migrating sparks. Somewhere beyond the horizon, a research ship lowers an instrument into black water, and it disappears as if swallowed by a drifting shadow. Minutes later, a number arrives on deck. Then another. Then a column fills. Temperature, pressure, salinity, simple words, steady lines. A patient story. If there were a careful survey, it would not need to shout. It would note where currents pinch and where they spread, where storm tracks bend and where they return, where cables meet the slope and ports gather their lights. It would watch the Gulf Stream breathe, count the slow rings of eddies, and treat the whole ocean as a steady heart. Yet the lesson inside that thought is not fear. It is wonder, and the hope that comes from knowing the map is never finished. That every wave writes a new line. Knowledge, like tide, arrives and recedes, leaving shapes in wet sand for anyone to read. The ocean's library closes no door. Pages turn with each wind shift, with each lunar pull, with each patient pass of a satellite's eye. If you listen, you can almost hear a cosmic whisper in the slip of water along the hull, in the hush after a breaker falls. It says that Earth is fragile and timeless at once, a place where memory and motion keep each other company. And as the night deepens, the sea holds its silence again, wide, luminous, and calm, while somewhere in that endless dark, a question lingers like a faint light far offshore, waiting to be understood. Light travels in silence, yet it speaks. Across the endless night, a soft glow slips through space, carrying the stories of what it has touched. Dust, ice, fire, and time. A telescope receives that glow and steadies it. A spectrograph opens the beam like a book, turning it into a quiet rainbow. In that rainbow are lines and valleys, little marks that tell us about temperature and chemistry. Starlight becomes a simple graph with gentle colors, pale golds, cool blues, a faint green veil, so that even at a glance, the universe feels readable, patient, and kind. The narrator's voice settles into a cradle of silence. Sodium lines rest near the warm heart of the spectrum. Sometimes they flicker, as if a tiny hand were waving from far away. To the left and right, other lines appear. Oxygen, carbon, water vapor released from an ancient traveler's skin. A comet passes the sun and breathes. Its outgassing leaves a luminous haze, and that haze steals and reshapes light. The spectrograph notices. The starlight hints at grains of dust, at molecules shaken free by heat, at a memory buried since the beginning of the comet's long orbit. We have heard this language before. In the past, astronomers watched a great nebula and saw forbidden lines light that should have been impossible in crowded air, but possible in the thin spaces between stars. They learned to trust what the spectrum said, even when the words were new. In the glow near a galaxy cluster, light stretches red with distance. Near a black hole's neighborhood, it blue shifts and brightens, dragged into a whirl, then thinned by gravity until only the strongest notes remain. Each place shapes the beam like a musician touching a string. Tonight the attention rests on 3ITL, an unknown traveler, perhaps a comet, perhaps only a fragment with a long memory. Its trajectory crosses the plane of our planets. It leans toward perihelion, then turns, following the patient curve that gravity writes. The solar wind brushes its surface. Sunlight warms its crust. Jets of vapor bloom like quiet fountains, thin as breath on glass. The spectrograph reads the fountains. Mist. The lines of sodium flicker. A small change in brightness repeats. It might be rotation. It might be dust. It might be nothing at all. Another instrument listens for something subtler. The polarization of light. When light bounces off rough grains or passes through thin gas, it can pick up a direction, like ripples on a pond, all leaning the same way. Polarimeters measure this lean. The numbers are small, a few percent, sometimes less. Yet a pattern there can tell us the size of grains. In a tail, the thickness of a coma, the way a jet fans out. If a messenger wanted to tuck a reply into the beam, this is where it could hide in timing, in angle, in the gentle turn of polarization across a night. The narrator keeps pace soft and steady. A plot appears on screen. time along the bottom, brightness up the side. Each point is a whisper. The line is not smooth. It trembles with wind, with thin cloud, with the heartbeat of the detector itself. Astronomers correct what they can and breathe with the rest. The curve begins to pulse in an easy rhythm. Not an omen, not a prophecy, just a likely spin as the nucleus rolls and yawns. Still, the mind wanders. In the fragile zone where curiosity meets fear, a forbidden pattern can seem like a knock on the door. Spectroscopy moves to other shores. Far away, an exoplanet crosses its star. The star's light thins and reddens as it passes through the planet's air. In those thin moments, a spectrograph can taste sodium, water, methane scents from another sky. We learn this language slowly, in patient steps. With each discovery, the universe felt less cold. The same tools now face 3 IA delays. They do not ask you to be a harbinger or an omen. They ask only, what are you made of, ancient traveler? What paints your tail? How does the solar wind comb your hair? The chapter glides through other lights. Pulsars mark time with crisp flashes, more steady than clocks. Supernova throw off fresh elements and their spectra glow with brand new lines. A diary written in fire. Even meteor trails in our own sky leave a thin, bright signature across the upper air. A brush stroke across the sky that radar can trace. And asteroids, when they turn, color their reflected sunlight in ways that reveal stone or metal, smooth or rough. All of it comet, meteor, asteroid, star speaks in the same language, and we learn by listening longer, not by shouting louder. Now. A softer image, the spectrograph room at night. The telescope dome is a drifting shadow. Fans hum as they drain heat from the detectors. On a screen, a fresh rainbow appears, crisp and clean. A student leans forward and taps a region where the sodium lines live. The lines are present, then thin, then bright again. The timing matches a subtle change in the comet's light curve, half an hour apart, and then again. Is this a trick of weather? An artifact? The team checks the sky camera and notes the clarity. Star sharp, no halos, no ice. The points still repeat dot at the edge of the graph. Polarization numbers flicker in step. Not perfectly. Nothing in nature is perfect, but close enough to be interesting. Could outgassing jets be turning like a lighthouse? Could the nucleus be tumbling in a way that brings the jets toward us, then away? The mind frames a kind thought. If this is a messenger, its message is simple. This is how I breathe. The calm voice explains that in science, a reply can be nothing more than a consistent pattern. The pattern is not a threat. It is a rhythm, a small secret carried by light. We step back to see the whole scene. Orbit lines in soft blue. The comet's path a pale thread curling around the sun. The trajectory looks ordinary, shaped by gravity's gentle hand. Near perihelion, the line bends a little more as expected. These are not the moves of a fortress testing our walls, but the motions of a fragile body warmed by a star. The wonder comes not from fear, but from the fact that light across 100 million miles can tell us what a grain looks like, or how thin a plume feels, or whether a jet prefers the sunlit side. The chapter eases into past tense to honor the journey here. Years ago, scientists learned to read light from a dying star and found rings of gas where none were expected. They listened to the whisper of stars in a nebula and discovered families of lines they once called forbiddens, only because Earth's air could not make them. They weighed a world by watching its parent star wobble, then watched the world's air as it crossed. Each step was small. Each step added hope. The more we heard, the less alone the night felt. Then the voice looks forward. In the future, this same language might help us map the faintest comets, trace dust in the solar wind, and follow unknown travelers as they drift across the dark. If a hidden signal ever came, we would likely first see it as a small anomaly in light, a change in timing, a pattern in polarization, a brightening that waits and then returns like a tide. The tools do not demand meaning. They allow meaning to arrive at its own pace, like dawn through a window. For a moment, imagine you are outside under the stars. The night is cool and still. A soft breeze carries the scent of dry leaves. Overhead, the Milky Way stretches in a faint band, a gentle veil across the sky. Somewhere above that, beyond the reach of your eyes, 3I Nadale S turns and breathes. Its tail points away from the sun, painted by the solar wind. Its light reaches you as a faint echo, transformed by dust into a tender hue. You cannot hear it, yet you feel the calm of its passing, like the hush that follows a lullaby. Back in the control room, the data finish their slow fall to disk. A final graph draws itself, steady as a heartbeat. Brightness and angle and time. No alarm sound. The team writes notes in quiet voices. They mark the small repetition for later, not as proof, but as a place to look again. The telescope begins to rest. Outside, frost starts to form on railings, and the dome door sighs as it closes. The sky holds its secrets a little longer. If light is a voice, then listening is an act of care. It asks patience. It asks humility. It asks us to stand in wonder before something fragile and timeless, and to accept that a reply, if it comes at all, may be as small as a shift in a line or a shimmer in a tail. We may never know if an unknown traveler meant to speak, but the act of listening has already changed us. It has taught us to soften our fear, to follow curiosity, and to see the dream hidden behind the data. The glow that began this chapter fades. To the horizon, the rainbow on the screen narrows and dims. Yet, in the dimming there is meaning. A memory captured, a beam unfolded, a quiet message tucked into numbers we can hold. Somewhere above the dark fields, the comet keeps moving, guided by gravity, drawn by the sun, leaving a thin thread through the endless night. The silence deepens, yet hidden in that silence is something waiting to be understood. History moves, like a drifting shadow across the night. Long before today's wide-field surveys and quiet control rooms, people stood under the same sky and watched a soft glow slide along a patient arc. A comet rose over farms and stone roads, a pale messenger, wrapped in a gentle veil. Some called it a harbinger, others a blessing. In the hush between heartbeats, the sky felt like a cradle of silence, and the world listened. Starlight crossed oceans and deserts to reach their eyes. They did not know orbit or trajectory yet, but they knew wonder, and that wonder turned the unknown into memory. At first, memory held fear. Records on clay and vellum told of unexplained lights and long tales, of nights when the moon looked small beside an ancient traveler. Priests wrote warnings. Poets wrote omens. Yet even in fear there was awe, the kind that slows breath and opens thought. Villagers counted days from first sight to last. Sailors marked the angle above a mast. A child pressed a face to a window lattice and tried to fix the glow in place with nothing but hope. The comet moved on, but the feeling remained like a faint echo. Centuries passed. Glass grew clearer. A telescope stood where once a torch had burned. The sky, once a rumor, turned into a measured page. Charts spread across tables like quiet seas. Someone traced a curve with a charcoal point and saw order where rumor had lived. The idea grew simple and strong. A comet is not a prophecy. It is part of a family of paths, an orbit written by the sun and time. The curve would return. That realization did not erase mystery. It tamed fear and gave mystery a new name: science. Telescopes multiplied. Catalogs thickened. Astronomers learned to follow a comet from first blink to final fade, testing each position against the last like footsteps in snow. The sky offered more. A meteor shower arrived not as chaos, but as a calendar event, the radiant marked on a modest chart. Sparks swept the atmosphere and fell away, small stones melting in the air and painting brush strokes across the darkness. The link to comets became clear. Dust, released long ago, waited on a path until Earth crossed it again. A hidden pattern, once a ghost story, became a gentle explanation. With each advance, a new question appeared. A spectrograph split the comets. Glow into quiet colors, and chemistry spoke in lines. Water, carbon compounds, sodium's faint flare. The tail widened from where to what? A comet carried ancient cold, a memory of the solar system's first dawn. It came from the far, the faint, the almost forgotten reaches beyond any bright nebula you can see by eye. Yet as instruments steadied the facts, anomalies remained. A slight change in speed here, a twist in the path there. Outgassing could do it, yes, but the file kept a small mark beside the number. Curiosity, not fear, is the turning key. Again and again, the unknown did not break our models. It refined them. Anomaly stopped sounding like danger and started sounding like a teacher. A meteor fell on a frozen morning, and its fragments told of minerals and heat. A comet's jets flickered like valves and whispered about sunlight and spin. Survey plates showed a smudge where nothing should be, and that smudge became a new catalog entry, a new family of objects, a new way to ask what else might be moving through the quiet. People changed with the tools. A monk who once copied prophecies would, in another century, chart variables in a ledger. A farmer who once feared a sign would in another place wake a child to share a rare light. A nurse at a late window would step outside between rounds and study the slow drift over the parking lot, the hum of the city mixing with the hush of the sky. Loneliness softened there. Wonder came in. In these small moments, science is not a lecture. It is a hand on a windowsill, steady and present, tracing a path with the eyes. Modern instruments never forget what the old watchers taught. Wide field. Cameras sweep the heavens night after night, catching motion the way a pond catches leaves. Software subtracts last night from tonight and finds the traveler by its change alone. Radar pings an approaching asteroid and sketches a rough face. Infrared sensors read warmth where starlight is weak. Even the search for an exoplanet far from our theme shares the same heart. A tiny dip in starlight, a patient pattern, a truth, hiding in the numbers like a cosmic whisper. Every method is a way of listening. And still, the ghosts return. Not spirits, but ideas, habits of thought, old charts in new hands. A bright, unfamiliar path appears, and minds reach for the closest. Story, harbinger, omen, threat. The sky does not change. We do. The documentary voice speaks quietly. When we trust old maps too much, we sometimes label a shoreline before we reach it. That is human. Familiar stories keep us safe. Yet discovery lives where safety eases its grip. The same care we use to rule out alarm lets us notice the detail that does not fit, the hint that asks us to look again. History offers gentle warnings and warm lights to follow. A comet once blamed for sorrow now feeds science with dust measured grain by grain. A meteor shower once feared as rain of fire now counts as a family tradition. A blanket on a hillside, a set time every year to watch the sky breathe. The past is not a judge. It is a teacher with a slow voice. It tells us that awe is useful and that caution is kind. It reminds us that fear often speaks louder than data, but fear grows quiet when numbers arrive like dawn. So we keep both pages open, the chart and the blank margin. We keep the model that predicts the arc, and we keep the space to ask what the model might be missing. If a traveler from far away crosses our sight again, We measure first. We test, compare, and ask others to check. We hold to the ordinary explanations, gravity, sunlight, outgassing, because they earn that trust. And when the numbers leave a small, persistent crease in the paper, we do not panic. We lean closer. The crease might be nothing, or it might be where a new idea waits, folded tight in the background. The wider universe continues its patient work. A supernova throws a brief daylight into the night of some distant world. A galaxy cluster moves on scales too large for any chart we hold in the mind. A pulsar ticks like a cosmic clock, marking seconds no one can touch. We are small, but not helpless, fragile, but not weak. We can steer a telescope, tune a spectrograph, and let starlight speak with the clarity of a bell. We can admit that sometimes the bell rings off-key, and we can listen until the tone makes sense. Imagine it now. A field, a porch, a roof. The air is cool. The town is a low murmur. Above, a faint smear lengthens near the horizon. No sirens, no crowd. Just the soft breath of night and the slow pulse of lights along a distant highway. You look up and feel something timeless, as if the same eyes from 1,000 years ago were standing beside you. The comet is not a prophecy. It is a story with chemistry and math at its center. Yet the feeling it brings, the wonder, the quiet fear, the thin thread of hope, belongs to all of us. We have learned much. We know how dust curves in the solar wind, how ice releases gas, how a tail brightens near the sun. We know that orbit is not a spell but a path, and that trajectory can be read like handwriting on a slate. We also know that the first glance can mislead, and that the second glance and the third, and the measured comparison across nights can reveal what the first glance could not. Discovery is patient. It moves at the pace of a careful breath. In that patience, the ghosts of visitors past become guides rather than warnings. They lead us to better questions. They give us the language to separate omen from object, rumor from result. They ask us to keep our tools sharp and our minds soft, to let awe stand beside caution. The night rewards that balance. Far above, a pale traveler crosses the quiet. It leaves almost nothing behind, just a filament of dust, a weak line. In a spectrograph, a note in a catalog. Yet in that almost nothing is a door. Tonight, the door stays closed, not in refusal, but in grace. The sky keeps its secrets with kindness. The soft glow fades at the edge of dawn. People who watched return to their beds or their screens or their morning steps. The memory lingers like a calm tide against a pier. History moves on, but its shadow is gentle now, more veiled in weight. And in the deepening quiet that follows, the oldest lesson of the Watchers settles again. The universe speaks in whispers, and if we keep listening, the whisper may yet become a word. In the quiet hour after midnight, a soft glow rests on the faces of monitors. Charts drift by like clouds. Lines pulse slow and steady, as if the earth itself is breathing. The idea is simple and gentle. Design a peaceful test. Do not chase fear. Do not hunt for omens. Just listen. Can public data, seismic logs, aurora maps, satellite light curves tell us whether a traveler in orbit could read the systems of our world? The tone is calm, the pace unhurried, like a whisper of stars passing a window. First, define the signals. If there is a reader, its study would leave only the faintest trace. The test asks for nothing dramatic, no fire across the sky, no sudden alarms, only shifts no stronger than a soft breeze. Seismic hum, measured by patient instruments. Set into rock. Magnetic waves felt like a deep cello note in the magnetosphere. Radiance at night, the pattern of city lights that flicker and dim like constellations on the ground. We gather what is already there, the open notes of a planet's daily song. Then, align the clocks. A traveler's trajectory is a script written in curves. Telescopes track the path of a comet the way one follows a brush stroke across the sky. If its perihelion timing nudges a plume here or a jet there, the schedule is careful. For the test, the moments of closest approach, the angles of sunlight, even the tilt of Earth's own axis become quiet markers. Nothing mystical, only positions. Times and the steady math of motion. Now, compare the timing. When the visitor turns its face to the sun, the solar wind thickens or thins like a gentle veil. Could flashes in the aurora correspond to those turns more often than chance? Do tiny meteor streaks, short-lived, shy sparks rise a little more in certain windows? The way a lake trembles when a light wind slips across it. We are not hunting an anomaly that shouts. We are listening for a correlation that whispers. Earth becomes a simple instrument in this model. The atmosphere carries strings that sing when energy flows. The magnetosphere is a drum that answers to charged particles. The oceans are a choir breathing in long, slow notes. A spectrograph splits starlight overhead into soft rainbows, while on the ground, a grid of sensors hears the world's faint echo. None of this is new or secret. It is the ordinary beauty of measurement, built by many hands over many years. Resting in the cradle of silence, long before tonight, observers mapped other messengers. A pulsar taught time by its steady ticks. A black hole announced itself by the glow of matter spiraling into darkness. The filaments of a galaxy cluster drew pale strands across the deep. Once, a supernova told us how heavy elements spread like seeds. Each discovery came from patient watching, from instruments tuned to the smallest motions. The traveler we imagine now may be only ice and dust, another ancient traveler. Still, the same patience serves, because the world is busy and full. The test needs guards against confusion. Weather sways the data. Power grids rise and fall with human routine. Holidays brighten and quiet whole cities. The solar wind itself can stir the aurora without any visitor near. So the plan is careful. Many days of baseline, many nights of calm comparison. We subtract what we can. We let the rest fade until only the most consistent patterns remain, like footprints left in dew. Imagine the lab in soft light. On one screen, seismic logs draw tiny waves. On another, the polar sky blooms with shifting curtains, blue, green, and rose, drifting shadow, and luminous haze. A third shows the night side of Earth from space, a map of lights that looks like a new nebula spread across dark water. The team speaks in simple words. Align, check, note, rest. A corridor clock ticks. A kettle hums. There is awe, and there is also a normal workday. The code is as simple as we can make it. We line up the traveler's closest passes with our world's responses. We slide the windows forward and back, asking if the echo grows stronger. When the geometry is right, if a result appears, it must be quiet, and it must repeat. No single spike, no sudden omen. The test asks for a pattern that returns like the tide, gentle, predictable, unafraid to be ordinary. From time to time, the narrator looks outward to steady the heart. Comets come and go. Asteroids trace slow arcs. Meteors flare and vanish like thoughts at the edge of sleep. In another sky, an exoplanet dims its star by a fraction, and a telescope far from city lights catches the change. The universe often speaks in fragments, in a cosmic whisper. It is natural to feel both wonder and a small fear, because the world is fragile and timeless at once. We hold both truths like twin stones in one hand. If the test finds nothing beyond the usual, that is still a kind of answer. It says the visitor is a good citizen of space ice, dust, memory. It says we have learned a little more about what our instruments can and cannot hear. It strengthens the habit of listening without panic, of asking clear questions and accepting quiet replies. Knowledge does not require a prophecy. It grows by standing where the light is best and taking notes. If the test finds a sketch only, a sketch what then? A sketch is not a weapon. It is a map that marks edges and currents, the way a sailor's chart shows shoals and stars. Perhaps the traveler's path aligns with our systems because physics makes those alignments likely. Perhaps a forbidden's pattern is simply a pattern we did not expect. Even then, the tone stays soft. We would not wake the city to say the moon has risen. We would write down what we saw and ask if it repeats. Some will ask whether to reply. The reply, if it exists, is not a beam or a shout. It is the simple act of making our own patterns kinder. Build grids that bend and do not break. Place sensors where floods can be seen early. Share data so a small town and a great city can both hear the same distant drum. The best answer to a hidden survey is a quiet resilience that makes the survey less important. It is a choice made in daylight and kept through the night. Others will ask whether to hide, but the earth is not a fortress that can close its doors. Our lights already paint the sky. Our radio hum reaches far beyond the clouds. Hiding from the starlight is like hiding from dawn. What can be done is simpler. Choose clarity over alarm, care over secrecy, science over rumor. In the long run, the steady hand leaves the safest trail. In the lab, someone leans closer to a plot. The lines settle into a calm rhythm. A faint correlation rises and falls with the traveler's distance, no more than a feather's weight. It might be nothing. It might be background. It might be the soft imprint of geometry, the kind a freshman class could compute on a chalkboard. Still, for a moment, the room is very quiet. Not tense, only aware, like listeners at the end of a song. Review follows. The result is tested on past visitors, on nights when clouds passed, on days when the sun grew loud. The pattern holds only in gentle ways, never sharp, never strong. The group writes, consistent but small, plausibly natural. A paragraph notes alternate causes. Another lists next steps. The paper is not a trumpet. It is a careful notebook page, the kind a teacher would be pleased to see clear. Simple, true to the data. Someone steps outside before dawn. The air is cool, and the horizon shows the first silver of morning. Overhead, starlight fades behind. A high thin cloud, a gentle veil over the world. If a traveler is out there, it is a drifting shadow now, somewhere along its long arc, moving on with steady grace. The earth turns. Cars whisper. A bird calls once, then twice. The sense is not of threat, but of belonging to a large, patient place. In that belonging, choices gather into meaning. Keep the instruments honest. Keep the questions open. Keep the story soft enough for sleep, but true enough for day. If the blueprint of our planet can be read by an unknown traveler, it can be read by us too. And if it cannot, then tonight, we still learned how to listen a little better, how to tell signal from noise, how to hear the planet's heart without pressing too hard. The monitor's dim. File save. The kettle cools. On the last screen, still awake, a thin line bends trajectory, not destiny, drawn by gravity and time. The line does not answer any secret in words. Yet it leaves a feeling, small and steady, like a lantern seen far off across water. In that soft distance, knowledge gathers. The sky grows pale, and somewhere beyond the brightening clouds, a quiet pattern keeps moving, as if the world itself were humming a tune that never ends, carrying a faint echo that waits, patient as dawn to be understood. Night rests across the town like a gentle veil. Street lamps draw small halos on wet pavement. Windows glow and dim, one by one, as if the city itself is breathing. Somewhere above, a comet follows its quiet orbit. an ancient traveler threading a careful trajectory through the dark. Down here, people keep watch. They are listeners in the cradle of silence. In a hospital lit by a soft glow, a nurse walks the corridor with steady steps. Monitors tick like mild pulsars, each beep a reminder that rhythm is life. The air smells clean and sharp, and the floor is cool under her shoes. She checks a chart, then another. A number here, a note there, small facts caught like starlight in a cup. Her calm is not empty. It is chosen. She has learned to spread her attention like a sky, wide enough to hold many constellations at once. A faint streak crosses the break room. Window a meteor, brief and silver, a drifting shadow that leaves no sound. She looks up and smiles. Someone else, somewhere, is watching that same brushstroke across the sky. Science lives here too, in the way she writes. Her notes are a telescope. They turn the unknown of a body into a clear field of view. The pattern matters. The pattern saves. Later, the report will read clean and simple, but it began as a human act. A person seeing, a person caring, a person recording what is real. If a traveler mapped our weaknesses, it would see this strength, this habit of careful attention standing, like a lighthouse on a dark coast. It would also see how others join her, shift after shift. A chain of keepers spanning the hours the way satellites span Earth with their soft rings of light. Across town, a student leans on a window ledge and waits for her small telescope to cool. The radiator ticks. The fan hums like a soft solar wind. She wipes the eyepiece with slow, neat circles, then lifts her eyes to find the familiar points. Bright Vega, steady Deneb, Altair, low and clear. The sky is thin tonight, a luminous haze over the rooftops, but the constellations still snap into place like memory. She nudges the tube by hand until a smudge climbs into view, an open cluster on the edge of a faint nebula, a cotton seed drifting in endless night. Her laptop screen shows a spectrograph from a school lab. Color splits into lines, and lines split into meaning. Sodium, hydrogen, oxygen elements humming their quiet names. She remembers a lecture on exoplanets, how a tiny dip in starlight can reveal a world, how a shadow crossing a star becomes a story we can read. It seems like magic, but it is patience. The universe does not shout, it whispers. A comet's outgassing tells its chemistry. A star's wobble spells the math of an unseen companion. Listening is the work. She thinks of the word anomaly not as omen, but as a note in the margin that says, look again. In the stillness, her loneliness loosens. The sky is wide, and she belongs to it. She imagines the comet 3I, a hidden messenger cruising under a cloak of dust, and wonders what it sees when it looks down. Not just lights and rivers, but people who stay up late to understand. On her desk, a postcard from home shows a coastline. Waves crease the sand in regular patterns. Nature loves a rhythm. So does she. In a quieter neighborhood, a parent sits on the edge of a child's bed and whispers a story as streetlight spills through the curtains. The child's eyes are half closed, lashes dark against a soft cheek. The parent's voice is gentle and low, carrying images that float rather than rush. Once, the parent says, travelers crossed deserts by the stars. They learned the sky like a map and passed it to their children, not to frighten them, but to make the world feel known. Out the window, another meteor sketches a thin silver thread, then fades. The room is a small galaxy, a nightlight planet, a blanket nebula, the steady heartbeat of two bodies in orbit. Maps change. So do people. And do people. When storms down power lines and the city sleeps in deeper dark, neighbors share batteries and soup. When earthquakes break stone, strangers form a line and pass water, hand to hand, like a human river. When wildfires carve new shapes, Families return with rakes and shovels, and the land answers with green. If a visitor tried to chart our weak seams, it would also chart these bright repairs. Cooperation is a signal too. It moves through us like a soft current, strengthening the grid we cannot see far beyond the roofs. Observatories lift their domes. Glass opens to the cold, and telescopes turn with smooth grace toward the black. Instruments do not have feelings, but the humans who built them do, and feeling is part of the design. The control room hums at a hush. Coffee steams beside notebooks, full of simple lines and careful numbers. Each exposure is a promise. We will wait long enough to learn. Data flows across continents like a galaxy cluster of minds, from mountaintop to seashore, from desert to ice. One lab sends a spectrograph, another sends timing. A third checks calibration and smiles when the curves agree. Through that network, all becomes knowledge without losing its warmth. News stories tell of supernova light arriving late, like a postcard from a friend who took the long road home. We turn that late light into a timeline and find that history has texture. Pulsars drum, radio dishes listen, the earth turns. In that turning, the comet keeps to its trajectory, and still we wonder. Maybe it is only rock and ice from afar. Forgotten nursery. Maybe it is a harbinger of nothing at all, the unexplained that yields, with time, to explanation. But the wondering has weight. It changes us. It makes us softer where we were hard, braver where we were unsure. In the hospital, the nurse pauses by a window that frames a square of sky. She breathes and lets the night answer back. In the apartment, the student puts a dot on a chart and whispers, "Yes, there you are." In the bedroom, the parent kisses a forehead and ends the story with a promise. Tomorrow we will look again. These scenes are small, but they form a pattern the way stars form pictures for ancient sailors. The pattern is not prophecy. It is practice. Resilience has a sound. It is not loud. It is the even footfall of a person returning for the next shift. It is the pencil scratch in a margin where someone writes, "Check this." It is the tiny gasp a child makes when a meteor appears. That quick intake of wonder, followed by stillness. It is the quiet click of a switch as power returns after a long night. It is the message sent at 2 a.m. "Are you okay?" It is the reply, "I am now." We tend to think of strength as stone, but strength might be more like water. It shifts, gathers, and finds a path even when the terrain is new. It can be still or moving, and it keeps memory in waves, one set folding into the next. The oceans carry heat around the world. People carry knowledge. Stories move first by mouth, then by book, then by screen, yet always by heart. The comet does not know this, and that is fine. The map we draw of ourselves is not for the visitor. It is for us. Outside, the wind picks up, and the trees speak in soft, familiar syllables. A satellite slides through the field of stars, a brief, moving point. The sky looks empty, but it is full of atoms, dust, sunglow, and time. Somewhere between those layers, the faint tail of the traveler unwinds and fades, then brightens again, following a line no one can trace by eye alone. The nurse finishes her notes. The student saves her plot. The parent sits a moment longer and listens to breathing that grows slow and deep. What does resilience sound like in a world of gentle systems? It sounds like this: a patient city, a shared chart, a hand extended without being asked. It sounds like the steady tone of a monitor finding a rhythm after a rough hour. It sounds like a telescope motor whispering as it centers a dim target. And like the soft click when the shutter closes after a long exposure. It sounds like the small yes we say to ourselves before trying again. Above them all, the ancient traveler moves on. Neither judge nor omen, only a passing light in a wide dark. Yet in its passing, it helps reveal what is already here. attention, care, and the quiet strength to repair what breaks. The night deepens. The city breathes. Somewhere, a single piano note hangs in the air, then fades. And in that fading, there's a hush so complete that one can almost hear a cosmic whisper gathering at the edge of hearing, the hint of meaning, the promise of more to learn, waiting in the soft places between the stars. Night falls like a velvet curtain, and the world settles into a cradle of silence. Above roofs and fields, three-eyed Atlas glides through the dark, turning its face to the sun and the earth together. A soft glow trails it like a gentle veil. There is no rush in its motion, only the slow grace of orbit and the steady pull of gravity. Imagine looking up and seeing a drifting shadow crossing the stars, a brushstroke that moves so steadily it feels like time itself dotting quiet rooms across the planet. Instruments hum. Telescopes nudge against the night, tracking the visitors. Trajectory with patient care. Photometry records brightness. Spectrographs stitch color into meaning, pulling thin rainbows from starlight to learn what dust and gas reveal. Radio dishes listen beneath the hiss of the solar wind for a faint echo, a cosmic whisper hidden in the noise. The closest pass is not a meeting so much as a moment of clarity. Gravity writes the curve, the sun shapes the arc, and Earth reads the line that slips past. Astronomers compare where the comet should be with where it is, searching for the smallest shift. Outgassing can act like tiny thrusters, jets of vapor, nudging the body by the softest breath. A millimeter per second here, a whisper there, and the trajectory learns a new syllable. The math is gentle, but it listens hard. Light tells its stories in simple ways. Sodium lines brighten and fade. Water breaks into fragments that glow in. Ultraviolet. Dusk grains scatter the star field in a luminous haze. In each spectrograph frame there is chemistry and history. Carbon, oxygen, and traces of organics older than our oceans. The tail is not an omen. It is a memory carried from a far nebula into our sky down on Earth. The magnetosphere folds around the planet like a shield. The solar wind flows past, and field lines bend, singing in notes too low for ears, but not for instruments. If any soft radio murmurs pass beneath that river of charged particles, antennae will hear them. Engineers tune out interference, the hum of cities, the laughter of satellites, to leave only the quiet floor where a signal might live. Meteor cameras wait as well. If dust follows the traveler, a few grains may meet the atmosphere and sketch pencil-thin streaks across the sky. Radar stations watch for those scratches, counting and measuring. A faint uptick is possible, no more than a hush, like rain on the far side of a window. From such small signs, science learns scale, particle size, stream width, a hint of how the comet breathes at this distance. Across oceans and deserts, observatories trade their watch like keepers of a lighthouse. When dawn washes one dome with pink, another wakes under stars. Coordinated timing turns many mirrors and dishes into one instrument. New measures slide into models, and the trajectory sharpens the way a pencil point sharpens on paper. The closest pass becomes a lesson not in fear, but in attention. Sometimes the data suggest an anomaly. A measurement lands just outside its band. A light curve dips a little too smoothly. The first question is always the same. Is the instrument certain? Teams check calibrations, rerun dark frames, cross-match with other scopes. Most mysteries fade like morning fog. What remains is folded into the story with care. The tone stays gentle because the truth is gentle. Consider the view from a backyard. You look up and find the faintest smudge moving across the stars. You do not hear it, yet you can almost feel the silence shape itself around that motion. Past travelers, asteroid, comet, meteor, have sketched similar paths. This one is different only in origin. Interstellar, an unknown traveler from a distant address, a messenger that may carry nothing more than ice and dust. The word, harbinger, belongs to us. The sky prefers patience. Still, watching changes the watcher. As the visitor sweeps through its closest pass, the instruments that follow it also map us. They reveal what we value by what we measure. We build telescopes because starlight calls to curiosity. We build spectrographs because color holds clues. We listen with radio because the solar wind hums through the night like a slow tide. In these careful acts, the map we draw of a comet becomes a mirror held up to our own wonder. The curve tightens. Ephemerides update. Tiny adjustments ripple through satellite planning and through schedules in domes that turn on oil bearings. The visitor's speed seems both swift and still like the minute hand that only moves when you look away. Stars drift behind it. The horizon rolls. We could speak about forces in grand words: gravity, radiation pressure, the outflow from a star. But tonight they feel like weather more than law. They are wind and tide to a small boat. The comet leans into them and glides. If there is a hidden plan, it hides within physics itself. Bodies move in curves. Light bends near mass. Dust showers become meteors when rock meets air. Observers try one more view, polarization, to read the angle of light off-grid. Infrared, to see heat where eyes cannot. Spectral lines again, to check whether water outflow rises with the sun's touch. Results arrive like small waves, each adding a little shape to the shore of understanding. In control rooms, coffee cools beside notebooks. Someone notes the time of closest approach, writes down the range and phase angle. Someone else draws a simple sketch, a circle for the sun, a line for Earth, an arc for the visitor. It looks like a classroom chart, easy to follow. Inside that arc hide many truths. How dust scatters starlight, how molecules form in cold, how a solar system, or a lonely fragment of one travels. The voice of the documentary slows. It remembers nights when comets filled the sky with fear and awe. Those stories are part of us, but they do not rule us. Tonight, the closest pass offers a quieter lesson. Fear arrives fast and burns out. Care arrives slowly and lasts. Attention is a kind of hope we can practice together. There is a mirror in that hope. If we imagine a stranger mapping Earth's weaknesses, we also see our strengths. Friendship between far observatories, trust between teams that share data, patience in the face of unexplained hums and narrow dips. The mirror does not flatter. It simply shows. A planet that watches the sky is a planet that knows how to listen. The comet slides on. The soft glow thins. The gentle veil is still there if you know where to look, but the moment has passed. Somewhere, a listener closes a window and leaves the night to itself. Somewhere else, a telescope turns to a pulsar, a nebula, an exoplanet with clouds and seasons. Nothing of doom visited tonight. The visitor kept its distance, and so did we. Yet everything changed in the way small things change a room. A chair moved closer to the lamp, a book left open to a page, a note added in a margin. The closest pass left clearer numbers, better maps, and a calm reminder that meaning grows with time. The sky absorbs the trace as it always has. Starlight returns to its steady shine. The solar wind flows on like a river that forgets itself only to remember later. In the quiet, you may feel the gravity that keeps us safe and the wider gravity that keeps the heavens in slow dance. The visitor becomes once more a drifting shadow, carrying ice and memory into deeper dark. And so the chapter settles without a lock, like a door left on its latch to let in cool air. The night deepens, screens dim. In the lingering hush, a single question remains, not sharp, but soft. If the map we thought we saw was only our reflection, what else might appear if we keep watching with this same patient light? A soft glow hangs at the edge of the sky, the kind of light that does not insist on being seen. It lingers like a quiet thought, like a drifting shadow at the corner of vision. In that hush, the world feels older and kinder. The documentary voice settles down to a calm register and breathes with the night. He speaks of maps that began as lines and numbers, and of how, after a long journey, those maps start to look like mirrors. In the cradle of silence, the idea takes shape. By asking what a stranger might learn about Earth, our seams, our signals, our fragile edges, we discover what we had already learned about ourselves. He recalls how the sky was measured, orbit, traced against orbit, comet against comet, each trajectory a patient curve. The telescope waited without hurry, glass polished to catch starlight like dew. The spectrograph split that light into thin rainbows and read the faint writing there: sodium, water, carbon, iron, letters of the cosmos drifting through the dark. In a story of discovery, the instruments are never loud. They are humble tools, tuned for the smallest whisper. They listen to a nebula breathing in the cold, to a distant exoplanet dimming its star by a sliver, to the steady pulse of data that arrives at the speed of light and asks for kindness in the reading. Maps teach direction. Mirrors teach recognition. The voice explains that we began with directions, where the visitor came from, how its path curved under gravity, how the solar wind brushed its tail into a graceful feather. We plotted the sky the way rivers are drawn, letting time turn points into lines and lines into meaning. But as we watched, something gentle happened. All of that careful watching, the hours, the notes, the shared charts started to reflect us. Patience chronicled in the logbook, cooperation in the chat windows, between observatories, all held in the quiet look at that when a new frame arrived, and a faint glimmer moved a hair's breadth across the stars. The camera drifts over a night lab. A red status light glows like a coal. Screens breathe in low brightness. There, blues wrapped in a gentle veil. Someone sips cold coffee and writes a small dot on a paper map, because the dot still matters in a digital age. Numbers collect, errors shrink. The trajectory leans a fraction this way, then that, as new jets near perihelion nudge the traveler's path. It is not an omen. It is simply how heat pulls on ice and dust, how physics leaves delicate fingerprints. Yet even there, the human trace is visible. The decision to doubt one's first result, the choice to rerun the model, the humility to say, "We don't know yet." He speaks of the past in a voice that makes memory feel warm. A supernova once bloomed in a nearby galaxy like a paper lantern igniting in slow motion. A galaxy cluster bent distant light into arcs, and we learned that gravity also paints. The path to each truth was quiet. A signal that first looked like noise, an anomaly that asked to be tested again. A pencil line extended across a chart until the trend appeared. These were maps of light, of time, of motion. But in the end, they showed us our own hands steadying, our own eyes narrowing, our own breath waiting for the next frame to load. Outside, the planet turns under the stars. Coastlines glow. The dark sea keeps its counsel. There is a comfort in the scale of it. Cities like embers, continents like sleeping animals, the poles a pale sigh. If a messenger were measuring us, what would be learned here? Power that hums through cables but can be repaired. Faults that move under mountains but can be listened to. Weather that changes, sometimes harshly, but can be read days ahead. There are weak seams. Every world has them. But the mirror shows more. The speed at which neighbors carry out lanterns in a storm. The way a nurse steps into a hallway pool of light at 3 a.m. The small hand pressed to a window when a meteor slips by. The narrator brings the focus back to the traveler, that ancient visitor with an untouched name in our records. Comet or rock, messenger or harbinger, it does not matter tonight. The film does not need to decide. The orbit is the orbit. The trajectory is the trajectory. The telescope has done its work without hurry. The spectrograph has laid its thin threads of color. If there is a secret, it hides in plain sight. The secret that listening well may be the greatest strength any species can practice. Listening to starlight. Listening to each other. Listening to data when it disagrees with a story we like. In a soft aside, he notes how little light it takes to be seen in the cosmos. A single star, a faint echo from an exoplanet's shallow transit, a dust trail reflecting the sun in a thin line. This is why maps can become mirrors, because the act of measuring light teaches you how little is needed to learn and how much can be learned by staying. We stayed. Night after night, we stayed. Through cloud cover and instrument resets, through calibration files and stubborn code, we stayed. That is not drama. It is discipline, which is the slow form of love inside science. The mirror shows it back to us without praise and without blame. He turns the language we gathered and threads it like beads. Orbit, comet, trajectory, telescope, starlight, spectrograph, nebula, exoplanet, supernova. Say them slowly, and they are lullabies. Say them slowly, and they sound like the sea. They began as the vocabulary of the sky and became the vocabulary of attention. With them, we asked a steady question. If a stranger crossed the map of Earth, what could it see? The answer, at last, is not a list of targets, but a portrait of care. Weak seams exist, yes, because all living things and living worlds are fragile somewhere. Yet the broader pattern is resilience. Repairs made, warnings heeded, knowledge shared. The mirror shares the truth without exaggeration, because mirrors do not flatter. They only reveal. The camera glides through an observatory dome at dawn. Frost pulls back into droplets along the rail. The telescope rests at park, the great mirror quiet under its cover. In the control room, a monitor displays a final stack of exposures. They look like snow on a dark road. A faint line threads from one corner to another. On someone's desk is a folded sheet of paper, a hand-drawn map of the sky from a week ago. Over it, an index finger has traced the path so often that the page is polished smooth. This is how humans answer the unknown traveler. With care so repetitive it becomes a kind of devotion. He does not promise what comes next. The future keeps its own counsel. Perhaps the visitor fades into the outer dark and becomes memory. Perhaps another arrives, an unexplained, slow-turning shape, a new cosmic whisper moving under the solar wind. When that happens, we will open the dome again. We will power the instruments, align the spectrograph, call the partner sites, and take our places beside the quiet screens. We will listen, not because we are afraid, but because listening is how we belong to a universe that never stops speaking. The music lowers to almost nothing. The voice becomes a murmur that feels close and steady. He says that maps help us find our way through space, but mirrors help us find our way through wonder. And tonight, the two are the same. The soft glow at the edge of the sky is still there, patient as ever. The unknown traveler moves on, an old story continuing its slow sentence, its commas and clauses made of dust and ice. If there was a message, it may have been only this: keep paying attention. A breeze shifts, a shutter ticks. Somewhere, an automatic dome closes like a sigh. The mirror holds the last of the starlight a moment longer, then lets it go. The world breathes, and the sky grows pale at the edges. In that gentle change, the lesson rests, that listening is not a task to finish, but a way to live. The glow fades to morning, but in its fading, it carries a small question that warms the quiet. If we keep listening with patient hearts and steady hands, what soft reply might be crossing the dark toward us even now? And in the wide, unhurried hush that follows, the silence deepened. Yet hidden in that silence was something waiting to be understood.